Whoever didn't know me from my Pat Metheny collaborations or my solo records, usually they know Birdman. The starting point for me is the drums. Drums has been the only constant in my life.
You get the Buddy Rich Scholarship. You get the Zildjian Scholarship. Clearly, there's signs. This kid's really good.
We had a double bill with Pat Metheny's trio. And he was listening, and he said, I especially like the way the drummer and the percussion player sound together. But it's only one guy. And then Pat was like, what? He didn't understand how I was doing all that stuff at the same time.
Speaking of now, you join Pat Metheny Group and you win the Grammy on the first album you make with Pat.
Pat has his own language. He always says that we're playing dynamics within the dynamics. It's not a straight line ever.
The studio, amazing show. You created this whole new thing, and now you're like the drum score movie guy. Like, how'd you get the gig to do the score?
They told me, we want to know if you can score the movies within the series. And I said, I can do anything you want. I love to leave space.
What are you trying to say?
We're going in a different direction, and we're not doing the Jonestown version of Kool-Aid.
I mean, that's comedy, right? Seth just said, well, I'm sold.
Shift Bad Hombre 2 features Dave Matthews, Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, Pat Metheny, of course.
It's the one album where I'm the least famous person in my album.
For sure.
Trent came up to me and he was like, man, you invented a new way of scoring.
Antonio can go from a grain of sand to an atomic bomb instantly on the drums. How do you put a solo album together?
Go! Let's go.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Thank you for watching. Today we have yet another musical legend onto the show, Mr. Antonio Sánchez. Antonio is one of my favorite drummers of all time, and he has become one of my favorite composers of all time as well. So Antonio is known for his extensive work, 20 plus years with Pat Metheny, and it's so many other collaborations all around that, including his albums Bad Hombre and Bad Hombre 2, which he had Trent Reznor and Dave Matthews and so many greats on that. So we go into all that, the whole trajectory of Antonio's career, I believe we cover in this. And of course, we go into Birdman. Antonio scored Birdman and went on to win the Grammy for Best Original Score, and Birdman went on to win so many Oscars, one of the greatest films ever. And Antonio's unique approach with scoring it with all drums truly changed the movie world and the music world. So incredible work. And we go into that with Antonio. And then all the way up to present day 2025, The Studio, which has 23 Emmy nominations. Antonio scored that TV show as well. And it's just amazing. So this is a near 3-hour deep dive with the legend, Antonio Sánchez. If you're new to the show, stick around for a while. We've had some of the most incredible musicians, producers, songwriters, artists, engineers, etc. from the music industry all on the show. And if you're a drummer, we have had some of the greatest drummers ever on the show. I want to give a big shout out to DistroKid. DistroKid is the fastest way to get your music onto Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, TikTok, and 150 other platforms. For as little as $2 a month, you can upload as much music as you would like and keep 100% of the royalties earned. You can also do splits and a bunch of other features. So if you're interested, go to distrokid.com/VIP/Elmo and get 20% off your first year. If you are not yet subscribed, please hit that little subscribe button or follow us or like us on whatever platform you are listening to us on. And if you can, leave a comment, leave a review. We so greatly appreciate it. It's a free way that you can support us and keep the show going because we are delivering you awesome episodes every single week. And also, we have launched our Patreon. So if you want to get closer into the show, you want to get backstage and interact with me and the guests in new ways, as well as finding out who in advance is going to be on the show, submitting questions for them, and even getting access to the Jam Jam, then go to patreon.com/GoWithElmo. We so greatly appreciate your support and would love to have you closer into the community with us. Without further ado, here is my interview with the amazing Antonio Sánchez. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. My guest today is a musical master of flow. He pushes the limits of drumming and might be the most melodic drummer alive. Wherever he plays, that art piece thrives. From jazz to film, TV shows to Metheny, 4 Grammy wins, Critics' Choice, and a nod from an Emmy. Whether it's now or later, it's inevitable you'll hear his drums in cars, planes, theaters, and over audience cheers. No es el bad hombre, es el gran hombre. Make a ton of noise for Antonio Sánchez.
Thank you. Wow, what a... I'm sure you say that to everybody, don't you?
Copy and paste. Yeah. I just changed Antonio Sánchez at the end, yeah. It was the same for Dave WECKL. I called him a good man in Spanish, and how are you, man?
It works, man. I'm good. How are you doing?
All is good. Great to see you. Thanks for scheduling the time. I'm so happy we get to talk right now.
Of course, my pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Born November 1st, 1971 in Mexico City. You start drumming at a super young age. You start gigging in your teens, and you are the grandson of legendary Mexican actor Ignacio Lopez Tarso. Rest in peace to the legend.
Thank you.
Man, he must have been so proud of you.
He was. It was a beautiful thing to have him as a grandfather. He was such an incredible example to me, because I always think if he would have been an actor like he was, but he wouldn't have been as successful as he was, and I would have seen the life of a suffering, struggling artist, maybe I would have chosen to go a completely different route. But I always saw him as such a just fulfilled human being, loving what he did until his passing at 98, just a couple of years ago, that it was just utterly inspiring. I really never saw anybody that had as much commitment to his craft as he did it. And I lived with him since I was 2 years old, something like that. Of course, I moved to the States when I was 21, but he was like my father, because my mother and my father divorced when I was 1. And then we moved with my grandparents, and he became my father figure. So he was an incredible example, and just beautiful to be around stages and actors and shows and premieres and film sets, TV sets, but mainly the stage. I love seeing him in the theater, and he was just such a bad dude, man. I mean, his voice, the way he would project, it was just something to behold.
That's so cool. And it's amazing that your musical career ended up bringing you into theater and everything too. It's so amazing.
Yeah, and it was just so beautiful that every time I would play in Mexico, he would just make he would never cancel a show, never, even if he was literally almost dying. I mean, that happened a few times where he went from the show in the theater, whatever he was doing, straight to the hospital because he was just about to keel over. But he would never cancel shows. And I remember he canceled one when I did my first Birdman live scoring event in Mexico City. He really, really wanted to be a part of that. And every time I would go and play in Mexico, he was there, and he was always just amazed of what we could do, because his life was so scripted. It was not about improvisation, and improvisation was always a curiosity to him. Like how do you guys do it? We would have conversations about that, and it was just a very special human being.
Wow, he sounds incredible from everything I've read about him and seen of him. What do you think the greatest lesson was you learned from your grandfather?
I mean, just love for what he did. Just total, absolute surrender to his craft. He really surpassed anything that I had ever seen. And I had worked with some incredible, very OCD people, but the way he just took it to another level. I mean, for him, it was beyond church what he did. It was really so serious and so meticulous. And I think he had a really, he had such a fear of not fulfilling his duty and to leave people hanging. I think when he passed away, I think that was his greatest fear, that he was letting people down because he had commitments, and he had. I remember he had a wardrobe fitting that day, and he was so sick that he couldn't go. So he asked if they could please come to the house and do the wardrobe fitting in the house because he just was just too sick to leave. So he did the wardrobe fitting, and then he went straight to the hospital, and a week after he was gone. But that was the level of commitment he had. He just could not bear the thought of not showing up.
What a beautiful life. We can only hope to have a life that fulfilled and that long of just making your art all the way till the last day.
Yeah, and he really, I think his plan was to die on stage. I mean, he really would have loved that, to keel over as he was doing, Shakespeare or something like that. He was, just a very special man.
Wow, so cool, man. Well, rest in peace.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. We all know you as an amazing drummer, but you studied classical piano at Mexico's National Conservatory, which must have led, obviously, into your melodic orchestral approach to the kit. And you were an amazing acrobat. And now I see you playing tennis. You're
Gymnast.
Gymnast. Okay. there's
different.
It's kind of this. Okay, an amazing gymnast. Excuse me. Just great physical abilities coming out of Antonio Sánchez.
Well, I always loved learning what my body could do if I just trained it, and gymnastics was, I think is the ultimate sport, where the things that you can do with your body if you just train it on a daily basis. And now, I'm playing a little tennis, and it's I love getting my butt kicked every single time, and I'm in pain, and I'm hurting, and my shoulders are hurting. Everything is hurting. But just to learn a new thing at this point in my life that is really just kind of addictive, it's really cool, because I never really quite had much of a hobby. It was all about music and music and music and music. So all of a sudden, at this point in my life, to find something that I really, really dig is really nice. And that takes me, somewhere else, that I don't have to think about anything else but what I'm doing. As a matter of fact, another thing I did, another hobby that I tried but that I couldn't really keep on going because it's a very expensive hobby, was during the pandemic, flying lessons. I started taking flying lessons, and I got my student pilot's license. But it's an expensive little hobby. It's beautiful, it's amazing, but tennis is a little cheaper at this point.
What planes were you flying or learning to fly?
Just ultralight. It was like Cessna looking
Yes.
Planes. But I used to do it in Mexico City. Well, sorry, no, 2 hours away from Mexico City, where my mother lives right now. It's called Valle de Bravo, and it was just a little airfield. And you would take off. I mean, just to give you an idea of how small this airfield was, I was taking lessons with my teacher, my instructor, Vico Volador. That's what they call him, Vico the Flying Man. That was his nickname. and we were just sitting on the runway, and he's like, "Okay, you gotta call the control tower and ask them for permission to take off." And there's the whole protocol of what you have to say. So I said it, and nobody replied. And he's like, "Oh, that's weird. Okay, say it again." And then, okay, so blah blah, permission to take off, blah blah, and nothing. And he's like, "What day is it today?" And I think I said, "It's Tuesday." And he said, "Oh yeah, there's nobody here. Let's just go." It's that small, the
No
airfield.
flight control.
So it was just a little strip, but you take off, and then there's all these peaks and mountains, and there's no traffic over there, so you can do anything you want. You can go very, very low, close to the ground, close to the water, and go in between all these peaks. I mean, and then I came back to, because I was still living in New York, and then I continued my lessons in New Jersey, and it was the most boring thing I've ever seen, because it was all about communicating with LaGuardia, Newark, and Kennedy, and make sure you're not hitting anybody, but there's nothing. I mean, one time we went to Manhattan, we flew around there. It was really cool. But other than that, it was kind of boring.
There was no air traffic control at the landing strip you were at the airport?
No traffic control.
That's
so
crazy.
in those kind of situations, you just have to say what you're going to do. And then if there's somebody around, they'll hear you. That's all.
Wow.
Yeah.
My dad's a pilot. I grew up flying Cessnas with my
Oh
dad.
yeah. Oh my God. So cool.
At the El Monte Airport. I'm born and raised in LA, but at the El Monte Airport, we would fly small Cessnas.
Is that why you were named Elmo?
No.
El Monte.
El Monte. El Mo. Yeah, I am the Mo in Spanish. But also back to tennis. I started playing a couple years ago as well, and have been loving it. And for exactly what you just said, it's such a great way for me to step out of what I'm doing and spending all my life working on to then have an hour or two where you can't think about anything else besides hitting that ball as well as you can and chasing it and not getting hurt.
And it's so difficult too. It's like a musical instrument, you know. I keep telling my instructor, man, it's just like a musical instrument. The racket, you know, how you hold it and your position and everything goes into how you're going to hit that ball, and it's really fascinating the level of detail that you can get into.
The better your technique is, the better you are as a drummer, the less hard you have to hit, the faster you can go. All those same with tennis, and it's so hard though.
Yeah, and it's also the same thing when you're practicing and then when you're playing. It's exactly the same thing because you're practicing, you know, drums or you know whatever your instrument is, and oh man, I'm flying, and then you play with a band, and then you have to negotiate all these other things that you also have to negotiate when you're playing against somebody in tennis.
Yes.
So all your training all of a sudden goes out the window, and you just running after balls, just trying to not fall on your face. So yeah, it's very humbling.
For sure.
Yeah.
So you were in Mexico until '93, and then you moved to Boston to go to Berklee. And you go to Berklee, and your mom put it on her credit card.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about my grandfather, but you know, my mother was really the culprit for me being what I am today, pretty much. I think because she was she still is an avid music fan, especially rock. You know, she was a rock and roller at heart. She was a hippie. You know, Woodstock generation, great British rock, especially. And I grew up listening to that. So when I first saw my first drum kit live, which, you know, I always tell the story. I used to tell the story in clinics all the time. My mother, Susana, has a brother, Ignacio. Ignacio had a girlfriend, Ana, and Ana had a brother, Fito. And Fito was a drummer. So that drum set belonged to him. It was a Ludwig Vistalite. And when I was 5, the whole family went to Anna's house just to meet the family of my uncle's girlfriend. And as soon as we got into the living room, there was this Ludwig sitting right there in the middle of the living room. And I remember it had all these boom stands around it, just facing it very, very low with tons of cymbals. They were all flat. And I just remember looking at that thing. I was like, what? But I knew what it was because I've been listening to that music for a long time. I had been listening to Zeppelin already, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, especially Cream. So then Fito came downstairs and, you know, he saw that I was just amazed by the looks of this thing. And he said, oh, you know, let me play a little bit. And then he put on the turntable, Whole Lotta Love, Led Zeppelin, and then he played along to it. And I mean, I was 5 and that was such a mind-blowing experience that day. I was like, man, this is it. And of course, you know, I flirted with gymnastics, piano, whatever, but drums has been the only constant in my life, really.
Wow. And for him to be playing it on the Vistalite kit too. So it's just like tonally hitting and it's gorgeous. And I can imagine that blew your mind.
It did blow that.
Okay. So your mom puts it on her credit card to get you to go to Berklee. You clearly realize, you and your mom realize that you have a real talent to explore and to go deeper in. And what an amazing sacrifice she made and a risk she took to do that. That's incredible. It's amazing, and yeah, bless your mom.
Oh yeah, bless my mom, for sure.
You get the Buddy Rich scholarship, you get the Zildjian scholarship, and so like clearly there's signs. Okay, this kid's really good. This kid's really good.
Well, I have to be honest, man. I mean, I had chops, right? I had been practicing a bunch in Mexico. I started playing rock, since I was 5, and playing to my little LPs, and then I discovered the Police, Rush. So that, trying to play along to those records was harder than playing to the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. But I was doing it, and then I saw the movie Amadeus, Milos Forman, the incredible movie, when I was a teenager. And then I was, what is this? This is incredible. And I had been listening to classical music a lot because my grandfather used to listen to classical music whenever we would eat. Whenever we would have lunch, it would be classical music. And then rock and roll with my mom the rest of the time. So I had those two sounds in my head. So when I saw the movie Amadeus and I saw this 10-year-old kid that was already writing symphonies and operas, who was a prodigy, that really intrigued me. And I was like, man, it's so beautiful that the sounds are just amazing. And I want to learn how to create those sounds. So then that's when I got into the conservatory, and I was a piano major. And I was playing, my Chopin repertoire, Debussy, Mozart. I have to say I was not the most dedicated or prolific piano player, because I was playing drums. I had my rock bands already. I was just trying to make it as a rock drummer. But I love the classical music, of course. And there was an ongoing jazz workshop in the conservatory that now it's actually a degree. You can get a degree now. But back then it was just kind of a little bit more informal diploma that you could get. And I remember hearing like the big band rehearsing and the little combos rehearsing. And like I said, I was totally into rock and roll. I was not into jazz. But of course, the sound of drums, right next to where we're doing classical music, of course, I was curious. So I started going down there, talking to people, and one friend of mine, we became friends, and he's like, check this tape out. And I remember it was a cassette, it's a cassette, and it said Chick Corea Electric Band. And I had no idea who these people were at all. And then I get home, I'm like, I'm going to check this out. And then it was that album Light Years. And I put that thing on, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And it was kind of the same reaction when I heard, Sgt. Pepper's for the first time, or Exit Stage Left, Rush, or Senyata Mondata for the first time. It was kind of that way, but in a way more sophisticated and advanced way. I think my ear was ready at that time to start absorbing this kind of stuff. But of course, playing along to that, it was not the same thing as playing along to even Rush. If you could play Tom Sawyer, okay, now you had the level, right? But then all of a sudden, this was, to me, this was the standard now that I wanted to reach, and then it became a whole different ball game. So I remember back then it was so hard to get any kind of material in Mexico. So if anybody had an instructional video from somewhere, and back then, of course, it was WECKL's instructional videos that were circulating. And I remember a friend of mine had them, and I had to get 2 VCRs, like Betamax VCRs, and connect them in the back so that I could make a copy. And it took real effort to learn things, because there was just nothing around, especially in Mexico. And I remember just watching those videos and copying WECKL so much. I mean, to a degree that I was like, yeah, I wanted to sound like him. Of course, he was such an innovative drummer, especially back then, where coming from rock and roll, everything was so new. And I didn't really have an ear for jazz yet. It was more like fusion. I liked it because it had a lot more to do with the sound of rock and roll. It had big drum sound, electric guitar, and electric bass, but they were playing all this crazy stuff. So my ear adjusted a little bit easier to that. But I devoured those videos, man. And I always thank WECKL for putting those out, because it really made my technique better, and gave me a lot of information to just improve. And then when I got to Berklee, I had all that, WECKL vocabulary, and I had the whole fusion thing really down, and I had my double pedal. But I got to Berklee, and they were really, wanting. I really wanted to learn jazz, straight ahead, and I had a few bad experiences of teachers. Yeah, realizing that I was talented and I had a lot of technique, but I had no idea what to do with it. And I was just hurting everybody in the band every time I played. Until, the famous time where Ron Savage was is a great drummer, and I really wanted to study with him. And in my first semester, I was walking around the hallways, and he sees me with my stick bag. He doesn't know me. I know who he is, but he doesn't know me. And he sees me like, "Hey man, do you play drums?" And I said, yeah. Why? Oh, because I have this advanced 8th semester bebop ensemble right now, and the drummer didn't show up. Do you want to come and play? Do you have time? And I said, yeah, of course. And in my head, I'm like, okay, this is a great opportunity for me, because this is an 8th semester advanced bebop ensemble. I'm in first semester, but after they see how amazing I am, I'm probably going to skip the other 7 semesters, and I'm going to save a bunch of money. That was my reasoning. And then I went and got my kit, because back then you had to have your own kit for everything. It was brutal, but that's the way it was. And I had a Yamaha Power V Special with 10, 12, 14 power toms, 22-inch bass drum with no front head, because that's where I would put 2 toms, super shiny cymbals, 2 hi-hats, and my double bass drum pedal. So I bring this kit to the advanced bebop 8th semester ensemble, and the kids are looking at me like, "You're gonna play with that thing, right?" and I'm like, I'm setting everything up, because of course this is gonna be my moment to shine. So I'm thinking, man, it's gonna be so worth it. Just wait, just let me set up my thing. And I set up everything, and then they put a chart in front of me that I didn't really know how to interpret lead sheets back then. I knew how to read music because of piano, but I didn't really know how to do the lead sheet thing. But it said fast bebop, fast swing or something, and it was Pent Up House by Sonny Rollins. So I had never heard of Sonny Rollins. I had never heard of Pent Up House, but I knew swing was 2 and 4 on the hi-hat and bling bling it in. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. And then I start playing, and immediately I get lost. I have no idea what's going on. I don't know how to follow forms at this point, but I know, I look at my watch. I'm like, okay, I only have 1 hour to show, what amazing, what a genius I am. So then I start playing all my fancy licks, and I was into WECKL, I was into Vinny, I was into Dennis Chambers at that point. So one-handed stuff. I had 2 hi-hats, double bass drum pedal. Just you can imagine how terrible it must have been. That I'm looking at the students, and they're looking at me with this face like, what the hell is going on? And I assume that look is from being impressed. I was like, man, these guys are like, I'm killing it. I'm killing it. They're super impressed. Yeah. And then I see, with the corner of my eye, Ron Savage, the teacher, and he's in a corner just kind of like staring at me with his eyes. And I'm like, oh man, I'm killing him. He's super impressed. This is great. And then all of a sudden he just starts walking towards my drum set and removes one cymbal and another cymbal and a tom and another tom. So he just takes the whole thing apart and just leaves me with my snare drum, hi-hat, right cymbal, and bass drum. But I still have my double bass drum pedal. So I'm still playing things there. So at one point I see him reaching into his pocket, and he takes out a drum key, and I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna take my double pedal away. And he kneels down and he unscrews my slave pedal, takes it away, and kind of irritated now looks at me, and he's like, okay, now solo. and then everybody stops playing, and I don't realize that we're like soloing over the form of this tune. So I'm like trying to just play anything, and nothing's coming out. Of course, it's brutal. I mean, I'm glad I kind of blocked out what I actually sounded like. But then all of a sudden, everybody comes in after 32 bars. And I'm like, why is everybody coming in now? If I was soloing, I mean, I didn't understand a thing of what was happening. So it was a brutal spanking. And at the end of the session, everybody left without saying anything to me. And I thought, man, this is the end of my career. This is so humiliating. I'm never gonna do anything after this. But to his credit, Ron was really cool, and he came up to me like, "Look, man, I can tell you put a lot of work into your craft, and I respect that. But I don't think you've been listening to jazz much, have you? What have you been listening to?" And I told him, and he said, "Okay, well, that's the problem. Listen to this is the discography you have to check out." And immediately he gave me, Miles and Art Blakey and Roy Haynes and Tony, the what you actually need to check out. And I remember starting to check it out. And when I heard My Funny Valentine, 4 and More, Miles Davis live at Town Hall, when Tony Williams was 17, I mean, again, it was when I first heard Rush, when I first heard the Chicory Electric Band. I was like, oh my God, what is this? I want to really learn how to do this. But this was different because you could tell the band was like a moving, living organism that was all morphing, like shape-shifting, all together. And I had no idea what was happening, but I just knew that I needed to learn this. And it was a tough few years of understanding that I had no idea what I was doing, and then starting from scratch. And luckily, I already had some chops that helped me along the way. But I really sucked in the beginning. I was terrible. Nobody wanted to play with me. Oh man! And when people would see me come into the ensemble rooms with my huge kit, everybody would be like, "Oh, this dude again, oh my God," And I started borrowing cymbals that sounded a little more jazzy, and I of course I had to buy. I remember I bought a Remo Acousticon kit with an 18-inch bass drum just to start sounding a little bit more jazzy because nobody wanted to play with me.
Oh my God, that's hilarious! I love that he made your fusion kit a bebop kit. He just took it away. You brought your giant fusion kit.
Yeah, I always say that was one of the worst days of my life, and one of the best days. One of the best days of my life, because that made me understand a lot of things about what I didn't know. Because I always say the most dangerous thing is not to be mediocre, but to be mediocre thinking that you're great, and that was me at that point.
Absolutely. And listener, if you don't know, Ron Savage, obviously teacher at Berklee, and still is today, and he's actually vice president of Berklee now, and.
Yeah.
I wish I knew that story because I was just with Ron. We were in Abu Dhabi together.
Really?
We did a panel. It was Ron and myself and Esperanza Spalding and Jesus Molina. It was a great panel, and we talked and everything.
Oh, nice.
The amount of incredible talent that Ron has taught, like the people that have come through Berklee, is unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. And I think that's one of the greatest things about going to that school, that there's just so many people that your community, when you graduate, if you know how to keep it and you know how to nurture it, it's very extensive.
So speaking of other faculty and everything, so I believe 1997 you meet Danilo Perez?
Yeah, I mean, I met Danilo through just the scene in Boston. I mean, he was never playing there because he was always touring, and he was already, like a touring successful international musician.
Yeah.
But he was the only one that kind of lived in Boston, of the people that were actually out there doing something. And he was always, curious about the talent that Boston was bringing.
Yeah.
So he came to a few. I had a gig at this place called the Wonder Bar every Thursday in Brighton, in Boston, and he lived close by. So sometimes he would come by and check us out with this band with 2 Venezuelans that I had. We were called the DEJOHNETTE'S because we were always in the edge of disaster. And it was a Latin jazz trio, but we had some really cool arrangements of standards and Latin tunes, and he would come and hang. and of course I would always be very nervous, when he would come, because I was like, what if he's auditioning, and he's looking for new talent. So with him, it was the way it worked. It was that I finished. I started hanging with him, and we got to know each other. And he had this thing in Panama called the Jamboree, where he would bring sometimes musicians from Boston to teach Panamanian kids over there. And he brought me over once, and we spent like a full 4 or 5 days together. I can remember, and there was a concert at the end, and we played. So we just became closer, and we played over there, and he was like an idol to me. And I remember on the way back, we took a cab together because we were going in the same direction. And when we were in the cab, he told me, somebody called me for a recommendation for a drummer, and I gave them your name. I don't want to tell you who it is, but I don't know if they're going to call, but I gave them your name. So just be on the lookout. I'm like, oh, cool. Thanks, man. I had no idea who he had talked to. But a couple of days later, I get home in my little apartment in Boston, and I check my messages, and there was a message that said, oh, this is the office of Paquito Rivera. We have your name was given to us by Danilo Perez, and we have a upcoming tour in Europe in July, all the festivals with the United Nations Orchestra, the one that Dizzy Gillespie used to lead before his passing. And are you interested? And I heard that message, and I'm like, oh my, what? I just couldn't believe it. Like this was like the big leagues. Paquito was also, I had records of Paquito Rivera as well. Because besides all the fusion and rock and all that stuff, I was also checking a bunch of Latin jazz with Paquito, Danilo, David Sánchez, Michel Camilo, all those guys. I had their albums. So when Paquito called, I was like, man, this is amazing. So there was 97. We went on a long tour in July, and that was my first big touring experience, which I was like, man, if I can do this forever, I will be happy. And it was just, I remember when we went all over Europe, and it was just maybe my second time in Europe, but my first time actually working. It was just incredible. And then when I came back, I actually didn't show up to the graduation ceremony in Boston, in Berklee, because I was on tour with Paquito. So I didn't make it to my graduation, but I forgot to, as an international student, I forgot to apply for my practical training, the one that allows you to stay for an extra year after you're done. And I completely spaced out. And when I came back, there was a notice saying you have to leave the country. You have so many days to leave the country. And I freaked out. And luckily, at that same moment, a New England Conservatory reached out to me and said, we want to offer you a free ride, basically, to do a graduate diploma at NEC. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It was so fortuitous. And then I had the option of studying with 2 private teachers. And instead of trying to study with drummers, which, I had done already for 4.5 years at Berklee, I said, I would love to learn from non-drummers. So I studied with Danilo. That was my private lesson. And the other one was with George Garzone.
Wow.
So both were amazing in completely different ways. George, for whoever doesn't know who George is an incredible tenor saxophone player that can really, really play outside the harmony. And he has this whole methodology of how he does it. So I remember we would play standards and, okay, let's play All the Things You Are. And then he would take it to the stratosphere. And I was like, man, are we playing All the Things You Are? I don't know. I don't know anymore. But I was trying to keep it in my head, But I was, maybe we're playing free now. And then all of a sudden, boom, in the beginning of the form, like he would play something that would let me know that, of course, he's absolutely aware of where we are at all times, and I should be too. So that was great training. Just to play free with them for an hour, it was incredible. And then Danilo was also great training, but I had an evil plan with Danilo, which was to learn all his music and then to pretend like oh, Danilo, how does this tune of yours go? Oh, Panama, do you know it? I'm like, oh, kind of. And then he would start playing it, and of course I knew everything. And he was like, oh, cool. And then we started playing. He said, bring a bass player next time, and maybe we'll play some of the music. So I'll bring a bass player, and it was just really, my plan was just to get that gig. I really wanted to play with him, but he had his trio back then with Jeff Ballard and Avishai Cohen. And I was like, man, I mean, the chances for me to get this gig are going to be very slim, but hey, I'm ready for whatever reasons. And basically for a year, he trained me to play in his trio, during these lessons that we had. And then one day, I remember he had a rehearsal in New York, and he told me, come by if you want, check it out. And it was Jeff Ballard and Charles Farnborough. He was playing bass. And I came in early, and Jeff was late. So Danilo said, do you want to start the rehearsal with us? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I had a pair of sticks, and we started playing, and I knew all the repertoire, of course. And then Jeff came, and they started playing, and I was like, man, it's amazing to watch this rehearsal live. And then Danilo's manager came a little later, and she said, oh, Danilo, by the way, Jeff cannot make these gigs in Paris in the fall. You remember that. Who do you want for drums? And I'm right there, and Danilo just looks at me like, him. He knows the music. He can do it. I'm like, I'm available. And then I did those 2 gigs. And I did a couple more gigs with PAQUITO. This was all 97, fall of 97. And then in the beginning of 98, all of a sudden I got a message from Danilo's manager saying, Danilo would like to, give you all these dates if you're available. And it was like hundreds of gigs.
Wow.
That he had back then. And that's when I started playing in the trio in spring of 98.
Wow, that's meant to be. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was all a very. I mean, I had a vision that I needed this to happen, but the way it happened, it was very fortuitous for sure.
Your evil plan worked out perfectly.
My evil plan worked out.
And then,
right.
So Danilo ends up leading to Pat Metheny, right?
Yeah. So we played with Danilo for a couple of years, and we were playing a lot. First with John Benitez, who's an incredible bass player from Puerto Rico, and then with Carlitos Enriquez, who now plays in the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, an incredible bass player, also New Yorican. He's amazing, and he was very young back then, but he had it all together already. And we went to play in Torino. It was the Torino Jazz Festival in Italy. And I knew that we had a double bill with Pat Metheny's trio, with Bill Stewart and Larry Grenadier.
Amazing.
So I was excited, of course, too. Back by that time, I already knew everything about Pat, and I had watched all the videos he had put out. He would put out really cool, well-produced videos, and a friend of mine was obsessed with Pat, so we would watch them all the time. So I was like, man, Pat was kind of mythical already in my head, and also he was one of the only jazz guys that could play huge crowds. Because he had the Pat Metheny Group, which was kind of quasi like a, rock pop thing. He would play very large venues. So in my mind, he was like, man, this guy is up there, alongside Chick Corea. Those 2 were my main guys. Mm-hmm. And so I was super excited that we're going to play a double bill. I wasn't sure we were playing before or we were playing after. I didn't care. It was like, okay, he's going to be there. And then I found out he doesn't like to close concerts. He likes to play first and then split. Mm-hmm. That's it. So they played first, and Pat is kind of, it's legendary in Italy especially. So he played with the trio and he killed, and the crowd went crazy, and then it's our turn to play trio. But back then I was playing with a hybrid kit that was a full bebop kit, but instead of the second tom, I had a flat timbal. Then my left side, I had a conga and a set of bongos that sometimes I would play with my hands or with a stick. And I had my cowbell the left foot, I was already playing a bunch of clave, and we were playing a lot of claves in 5/4, in 7/4, and 7/8, and it was rhythmically, it was very interesting what we were doing, and we had been playing a lot, so we sounded good. We sounded like a unit. I remember, the story goes that we're playing and Pat always plays and then has dinner right after. And he was having dinner with the promoter right backstage as we were playing.
Mhm.
And then the promoter asked him, so what do you think about Danilo's trio? And he was listening and he said, yeah, I like it, man. And I especially like the way the drummer and the percussion player sound together. And the promoter says, no, but it's only one guy. There's no percussion. And then Pat was like, what? And then he stood up and went to the side of the stage and started checking me out because he didn't understand how I was doing all that stuff at the same time. So that was the first time he cut I cut his ear. And I remember after the show, he was like, hey, I'm Pat, and he introduced himself. Oh my God, it's like, I didn't know what to say, but I was just amazed that I got to meet him and we played with him. And Bill Stewart was there and Larry Grenadier. I mean, to me, this whole royalty, right?
Major hang.
And I'm a kid from Mexico City, man. So all of this people were idols to me, and I had seen them, on videos, or I had the records and stuff like that. But they were so far fetched to be among them. Anyway, I just felt so lucky to be there. And then on the same tour, just a few days later, we were playing in this little club in London called the Pizza Express. And Pat was also playing that night in London at a big venue called the Barbican Center. So we played the first set and it was cool. And then the second set, it turns out Pat was in the audience. So we played the second set. I didn't know he was there, but we had a great second set. And then after the show, I realized he was there, and he came with the trio, and we were hanging and we were talking. I was in heaven. And then he was like, let's exchange emails. I'm like, sure, so I gave him my email. And I remember maybe a few days later, I get a really long email from him saying, I really liked what I heard that night, and, blah, 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 this, I really dig this and really dig that. And now some questions. Do you like touring extensively? Do you drink? It was like a questionnaire, like a job questionnaire. And I was like, wow, this is really far out, And of course, I replied immediately. And then at the end, it said, are you around next week? Do you want to play? And I was like, holy shit, he wants to play. And I said, yes, I'm around next week. Just tell me where to go. And he said, well, I have a studio now in around Times Square. So just come with your sticks. I have a Jack DeJohnette's drum set is there. So just bring your cymbals. So I was like, okay, cool. And I remember I went to Times Square, and I had just moved to New York. I had just moved to New York, maybe just 1 year before or something like that.
Wow.
And so I'm like in Times Square, like the belly button of the world. I'm like, oh my God. And I go through these doors, and then I go to the 7th floor and I knock the door, and then Pat Metheny opens the door and like, hey man. And I went in and I'm like, man, this is so surreal. And then I see Jack DeJohnette's white drum set, Sonor kit, that is just sitting there.
Oh my God.
And I have my cymbals, and I'm like, yeah, man, make yourself comfortable. But as you know, Sonor, certain models, you need a special key to tune them. And I did not have this key with me. And the drums sounded terrible. I mean, they were really old with those black heads that Jack plays with, but they had not been tuned in a long time. Yeah. So everything was super floppy. And I was like, and I didn't have the heart to, the guts to tell Pat, like, man, I can't tune these drums. So I was trying with a quarter. I found a quarter I was trying, but it still sounded kind of crappy. But anyway, he was like, hey, are you ready, man? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. And then I remember the first thing he started playing is like, Turn Around by Ornette Coleman. And okay, I start playing. And then we played All the Things You Are. Like he has a few tunes that are his like his measuring stick of what he can do with another musician.
Yeah.
So he knows these tunes inside out. He loves playing them, and we played a bunch. And I remember at some point I was playing it, and I thought I was doing okay, and then all of a sudden I looked at him, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is Pat Metheny! I'm playing with Pat Metheny," and I kind of freaked out and I got tense. And I thought, okay, relax. I think you're doing okay. Just relax. Don't think about it. Just play. And then we played for 4.5 hours, man. And
Wow.
And at one point he said, okay, what would you play on this? And then he would start playing something from the Pat Metheny Group
Mhm.
that I would recognize. I'm like, oh, I know that tune. And then I would start playing, and it's like, okay, can you play 75% more right cymbal, 12% less your hi-hat, and then maybe 15.5% less on your snare drum, and maybe 51%. But he would literally say those percentages like that. And he was kind of joking, but not joking, like just to see how much I could take instruction and how far I could work with my inner volumes, while I was playing. And I was like, okay, he definitely wants less hi-hat. He wants more right cymbal. He wants just very little ghosting on the snare and very, very soft bass drum. But the right cymbal is the definitely the strong element of what he wants. And he would try to, just see how well I could negotiate all these things. And at the end, he said, like, look, man, I've been thinking of making a change to the Pat Metheny Group. I think you could be a good candidate because you come from straight 8-note playing. You don't come from swing. We mostly play straight 8-note music, and you have a rock background too. You can play backbeat, and you have a Latin background. We play a lot of Brazilian influence stuff and Latin influence stuff, but the language we use to improvise is bebop. So you also need to know how to learn how to play bebop, because that's how we interact. So luckily I had all that stuff down at that point in my life. And man, he kept me guessing for a long time, because he said you could be a possibility, but he never said you got the gig.
Yeah.
And it took maybe almost a year of us getting together every time we were both in town. We would I would bring bass players, we would play, and I remember one time, because I could not stop thinking about this, because I knew that this would be a life-changing gig for me.
For sure.
So I said, at one point I couldn't take it any longer, and I asked him, so man, have you thought, because we got together again to play, have you thought about what we talked about? And he's like, oh yeah, man, I think about it all the time, maybe like 23 hours a day. Cool. So, and then he changed the subject. I was like, oh my God, you're killing me here.
Change the subject.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die, because I was really, I couldn't sleep. And then
just the anticipation
maybe
of, do I have this or not? This is going to change my life if it does. I want it so bad.
Yeah, and I was living in a terrible little apartment. I was just roughing it in New York. I was like, man, I really would like to know if this is gonna happen, just to plan ahead in my life.
Yeah.
And then a couple of weeks later, he called me like, man, let's play again. And can you come? Half an hour earlier, I would like to talk to you about something. And I was like, this is it. He's gonna tell me I have the gig or not. And I arrived a half an hour earlier, and he's like, I've been thinking about it, and I think you could be, you if you want the gig, it's yours. And I'm like, I want the gig. Yeah, cool. So we go into the studio this month, we start recording, and then we go on tour immediately after. And I remember we recorded, speaking of now, it was 2001. It was June, I think we recorded it. And then in July, we went on a trio tour with Steve Rodby all around Spain. And it was just like surreal, just to be in the studio with Lyle Mays and Pat Metheny, and then immediately go on tour with Steve Rodby and Pat. And it was just a crazy period of my life that obviously, that set up the whole scene for the rest of my career, basically.
Unbelievable. So you joined Pat Metheny Group, you cut your first album with him, speaking of now, and you win the Grammy on the first album you make with Pat.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, it was a crazy period of my life, man. Wow. I mean, I remember walking around because I used to live on 14th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. And I remember walking on 14th Street after I got the gig. And it was one of those where you really feel like you're walking on air. You know, I'm like, I'm in New York. I could see the Empire State here. I could see the Chrysler Building, and I just got the gig with Pat Metheny. It just couldn't get any better. You know, it was just beautiful, great feeling.
Yeah, and you're working with Lyle Mays too, and Richard Bona, right? Richard's on the album.
Richard Bona, yeah, Richard's on the album, and Kung Vu. Was an incredible trumpet player and singer artist from Vietnam, American, but he was born in Vietnam. It was just a great band. Steve Rodby on bass, and that album, when I listen to it, I mean, it's such a great album. The music they wrote, but when I hear it, I feel like I'm sounding the way I thought they wanted me to sound. I don't feel like I sound like myself. I hadn't really found my voice within the band yet, and I really wanted to please. I really wanted to get the gig. I did not want to get fired because they were not happy with how different I was playing. So I was really trying to play within what I consider the history of the band was, which expanded decades with Danny Gottlieb first and Paul Werdico afterwards. So, you know, I got my 2 flat right cymbals, and I was doing things that I was not used to doing, to be honest. And I was playing in a way that I was not used to playing, but I really wanted for them to feel comfortable. But when I hear it now, it's like, okay, I don't sound like myself. Then the second album, The Way Up, which we did after touring extensively, and we started recording that album in 2003, I think, immediately after. But I was already, you know, we had hundreds of gigs under our belt at that point, and now I felt like, okay, now I think I can be myself, and The Way Up lent itself a lot for me to just kind of go crazy. And one thing that most people don't know, because a lot of people think that's one of the best albums or the best album of the Pat Metheny Group, which was the last one. And for those who don't know, it's an extended composition. It's from beginning to end. It has many movements. To me, that's a masterclass in motivic development and storytelling, which is what I aim to do when I play drums. When I play solos, it's exactly the same thing. Just grab motifs and develop them over a period of time. And when they started thinking about doing this project, the first thing we did is we went into the studio. I brought my drums, and they had me play a bunch of different grooves. They said, okay, play something in 6/8. So the first thing that I played was the beginning of The Way Up, which is that's what I played. And
that
then
drum beat is incredible, by the way. I love that beat.
Thank you. But what they did is that they started writing to all the beats that I played that day, and that's, I don't know, you know, if that made it work in a different way than if they would have had nothing to work with, and they just wrote. But they had my blueprint and in a bunch of rhythms, and I remember we were the whole day just recording a bunch of different grooves and feels, and then later, when they gave me the first demos, it was some of those drum parts with already Lyle Mays and Steve Rodby, Lyle Mays and Pat Metheny on top of my drum beats already, you know, with a lot of the music that ended up being the Way Up. So it was really really cool process.
Oh yeah, if anyone listening to this has not heard The Way Up, please immediately go listen to that album front to back. It'll blow your mind. I think it's some of the most brilliant music ever recorded. It's so heavy. The drumming is unbelievable, straight up from part 1. Just right off the top with that drum beat you're referring to is so amazing, and where it goes, and it just continues, it just grows. It's like watching a movie, just listening to it.
Yeah, no, it really is like an amazing novel or a movie, whatever you want to call it, but it was just incredibly beautiful to be part of that process. And then the tour was incredibly exhausting. I mean, we did 6 months, like nonstop, basically. And I remember people were kind of breaking down by the end of that tour because it was just a little too much of a good thing. Because we would play The Way Up, which live lasted an hour and a half. And then Pat would quickly introduce the band, and then we would play for another hour and a half or hour 45 minutes. Just the other hits that he had from previous records.
That's insane.
The first gigs were like 3 hours 45. And I really felt like I was, my hand and my arm was just, and also I did not know how to pace myself back then because I was so eager to play. I was hitting too hard and I was kind of hurting myself. After every tour, my neck would be a mess. I would have to go to the chiropractor. I just didn't know how to pace myself. Later, I learned how to do it, but it was those tours were brutal, man. It was just beautiful music, but it was like 6-7 gigs a week that we were doing. One-nighters. All one-nighters. Yeah, Pat is a beast.
So many notes so fast.
Yeah.
I can only, and for that many hours, that's crazy. A 3-hour set of straight ahead pop music is difficult, let alone playing The Way Up and then Pat Metheny records. That's crazy.
It was incredibly intense. And I'll tell you a funny story. So at the end of that tour, we were playing the Beacon Theater 2 nights in New York.
Legendary.
That was the end of the US leg, I remember. And I was so tired that I was like, man, I just need coffee. And there's a Starbucks right in the corner. And back then I was really into vanilla lattes for some reason. Don't blame me for it. But I was really into that.
You.
Yeah, don't judge me. And I kept going back to Starbucks to get a vanilla latte. And in my head, this is, vanilla latte, But I did not realize that each thing that I was having had 2 shots of espresso. So I must have had, 10 shots of espresso before going on stage. So we start playing and I feel great. And then all of a sudden I start blacking out as we're playing. Like my blood pressure just completely dropped all the way to my feet. The click, because everything was to a click, I could hear is just started disappearing. And I was like, I literally thought, should I faint here or should I leave and try to faint backstage? Because I don't think I'm going to make it. And I remember Steve Rodby, who was on the other side of the stage, while he was playing, looking at me, and he was just like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I don't know what I said, but he could see probably I was completely white, about to faint. And I literally got lost in the music because I couldn't hear. My ears got blocked, and I made everybody get lost in one of the most complicated parts of the piece. Luckily, we were able to get back somehow, and my blood started coming back, and all of a sudden I was like, I think I'm okay. But I almost fainted in the middle of that gig at the Beacon Theater. It would have been such a disaster.
That's when they had an intervention with you about vanilla lattes.
Vanilla lattes. I think that's when I stopped having vanilla lattes, actually, after that incident.
Antonio, we have to have a serious conversation. You're having too many vanilla lattes. So,
it's an issue.
So with Speaking of Now, Pat brought you compositions, but with The Way Up, he did not.
I mean, he would have demos.
Okay.
Very well detailed demos, but I had carte blanche to play whatever I wanted and to make my own parts, and everything was based on The Way Up. Of course, it was based on the rhythms that I had already played.
Sure.
So then it was kind of easier.
So for other records, outside of just when it was already based off that, when Pat brings you a composition, then what? Like, how does it work to create a new piece of music with Pat?
Pat has his own, Pat and Lyle. But also Pat by himself, he has his own language. It's a very clear language that you kind of have to work with, and it's a little bit like this. Within that, you can do a million things. It's endless what you can do, but you have to know that language. And if you don't know that language, then you're going to have a hard time playing with them and interpreting, because it's not jazz. It is jazz, but it's not jazz, and it's all based on bebop. It's all based on that language, the way you interact with another soloist, but you are not really playing bebop. And you sometimes you're playing a backbeat, but you're interacting in a bebop way, and it's very strange. It's very strange, and a lot of people that come into it in the beginning have a hard time, or Pat has a hard time playing with them, because they when you're a jazz musician and you come into a situation like that, it's like, oh, I'm gonna play my own thing, I'm gonna be free, of course you know the rules, but you don't know his rules, and his rules are different than if you're just playing jazz or bebop. So once you learn that language, and that comes from listening to his records and playing with them, of course, then everything's fine. But in the beginning, it was definitely difficult to adapt to his playing, especially because they were so used to other drummers before me. And when I was playing music that they had been playing for decades, like for example, "Tan tan 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 tan," "Are You Going With Me," which is a Pat Metheny classic. I was like, oh man, this is the easiest song ever. Man, it took us months to get that where he wanted it, because it was so specific with the pattern I was doing with the left hand, because it's a kind of a bossa, really. It's what you're playing is a bossa, but if you're thinking bossa, it's not gonna work. You have to think Pat Metheny, Pat Metheny Lames, but you're playing a bossa beat, and the dynamics. I think that's the hardest thing to get with Pat, because he always says that we're playing dynamics within the dynamics. So it's not like we're playing soft or we're playing loud. We're playing, if we're doing this, in order to get this, we're going to do this. And if we're going to get down there, we're going to be doing this. It's not a straight line ever. So we're always, kind of dancing or surfing around the music. And once you get that, everything starts becoming easy. But he's an incredible, meticulous guy. He really knows what he wants, and he will do anything in his power to get it out of you. And if you can't do it, then he'll call somebody else.
So then your next ensemble with Pat is a trio with you and Pat Metheny and Christian McBride, completely different than the Way Up, right? So what changed in your drumming language when you went from the Way Up's massive architecture to that stripped down trio with Pat and Christian?
Yeah, I mean, it was also a difficult change, because I was not used to playing trio with Pat. I was used to playing in this big. It was like driving a truck,
for sure.
Versus all of a sudden you have a Formula One car where you can do a lot of other things, and we're playing to a click on the Pat Metheny Group, and then all of a sudden where there's no click, so everything is different. And I had never played with Christian, but Christian, of course, he's a beast when he plays the bass, and his beat is so big and so strong that it just kind of pulls you. And I had to learn how to negotiate a lot of little things that I was not used to up to that point, because like I said, we were playing completely different music, and all of a sudden we're playing rhythm changes, and we're playing blues, and we're playing other things. But it's also, I know Pat's language, and I know his lexicon, and I know what he likes, I know what he doesn't like. So then it was also a little bit of a struggle in the beginning to negotiate what I knew he wanted versus what I wanted to play. So it was definitely a more free environment in the sense that I could do things that I couldn't do in the other configuration. But still, he has a very particular way of playing ballads, for example. You're playing the brushes, and he always says that he plays these really long ideas. So if he's playing a long idea and then you get in the middle of that long idea, it kind of throws him off. So a lot of times you have to keep it very simple, Christian also had to learn how to play less and less, and kind of he leans back on the time a lot. So sometimes he leans so much that you're thinking, oh, he wants us to slow down, and then you start slowing down because maybe he wants it slower, but then he starts playing on top and kind of looking at you like, no, what are you doing? So you have to keep it really, really steady, and then he leans back crazy sometimes. And then sometimes we would have talks about it, conceptual talks, and then that would make it a little easier. But he has a very particular way of doing things, and in order to get his point across, he needs certain things from you as a drummer. And you know, the beautiful thing about our relationship was that I was the only drummer that virtually played with every project he put together since 2001 until, you know, just a few years ago. So I was able to play trio, quartet, you know, quintet, the Pat Metheny Group, you know, all kinds of configurations with Gary Burton, Steve Swallow. You know, it was the Unity Band and Unity Group with Chris Potter and Ben Williams. So I got to play all kinds of things with him, which was really, really nice.
With Day Trip and Tokyo Day Trip, the live album, it's incredible to hear how similar they are. Was the intention to show that?
Well, I think there's some different tunes, right? I can't remember very well, to be honest.
It's like listening to Day Trip, but live, but it's so similar how perfect in tempo you guys are still playing it, and like and the arrangements and everything. I was like,
but there are slightly longer versions. I think,
yeah.
And there's a little bit more openness. And I mean, doing live albums for me is always nerve-wracking because, you know, you want to capture the live intensity, but you also have to be very careful because you know you're being recorded.
Yeah.
If you know you're not being recorded, then you just go for the energy of the moment, and it's great. But if you know you're being recorded, then you have to take care of a lot of details that maybe you don't care so much about. Just the cleanliness and the accuracy of things. So I remember that was a little bit stressful recording. I mean, for me, any live album. When I recorded my own live album, it was very stressful.
What's the best lesson Pat Metheny's taught you?
I mean, just what I admire from Pat so much is just his work ethic, man. I mean, he's just relentless. He's a machine. He will, you know, when we would be in the studio, we would record all day. I would be exhausted by the end, and then he would stay in the studio and then, you know, listen to stuff and fix stuff and write new things. And just like Chick Corea was also that way, just so prolific, so focused, and just such, you know, workhorses, you know. And there's no surprise. They are who they are because, you know, to keep that pace going for so long, being so intense about the music you make, it was really exemplifier for me. And to be working with those people just makes you kind of insecure in a way, because I was also wanting to do my solo thing and write my own things, and you know, it's just they make you feel like you're such a slob. You know, you're so behind, you're so lazy in a way, just by example, you know, because they work so hard, and it's just inspiring to watch that commitment. Just like with my grandfather, it was kind of that kind of church attitude, you know. It's like a religion.
I was speaking with Alex KERLAND, and he says hello.
Hello, Alex.
And I told him I was about to speak with you, and I was asking him because he was like, "Oh, I go way back with Antonio, with his dad and everything." And
yeah, he was a kid, man. He was just a little kid when I started playing with Pat, and of course he was always around. Yeah, he was playing drums too. Yeah.
He was like, "I saw 20 shows of The Way Up." So that's a lot of hours.
That's a lot, yeah.
But I asked him, I was like, what do you think of Antonio? And he said, Antonio is a man of integrity. That's the first thing I would say to describe him. And he said that you reimagine the possibilities of the drum. And I loved this. I had to write it down. He said, Antonio can go from a grain of sand to an atomic bomb instantly on the drums.
That's nice. That's a nice thing. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. I'm a man of integrity, but it cost me a lot of money for him to say that.
He also said that Pat said that Pat's wish, his drumming wish that he always had, was for someone like you to exist, and he was so happy when he found you.
Yeah, we had a great time, and it was, he was such a mentor to me. I mean, we're not playing that much anymore because I'm doing my thing, and when you play with Pat, you have to be, there. You cannot do Pat kind of halfways. So the level of commitment he requires from somebody, it just started conflicting a little bit with my thing. I wanted to do my band, my albums, and then Birdman happened, all that stuff, and I just felt like is nothing bad happened. It was just a matter of how much he demanded of anybody's time, because he has so many gigs. It's crazy how much he can work. So we let it rest a little bit, but I admire him and I love him.
So cool. Well, let's move on to Birdman. Just incredible. It's also crazy that it's been over 10 years since Birdman came out. I didn't realize that. When you did Birdman live, I got to go and see it.
Oh yeah, where did you see it?
You did a theater in downtown.
Yes, I remember that theater.
It was huge old theater. One of the old.
Oh, it was the first time I ever did it.
That was the first one. I thought so.
Yeah, that's when Michael Keaton came.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the first time I did it.
That's great to know, because I remembered that, and I thought it was the only time. I didn't realize till later that you had done a tour of it, essentially. So yeah, I saw the first one, and it blew my mind, and I sat in the front row right next to you, because you were set up like obviously in front of the screen, but it was like right. If you were sitting in the front row, I was like 5 feet away from you. And I could see that you were like looking down, focusing and playing, and the screen was like to your right, essentially, and huge, because that theater is probably 2,000 people, like an enormous theater.
Yeah.
And you had the time code next to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had the screen with and the time code. Yeah, a little monitor in front of me.
And it seemed like when I was watching you play it, because I mean, Birdman, I was so excited when Birdman came out. It was such a great year for drummers, like you doing the Birdman score. It was also the same year Whiplash came out. I was like, this is the best year for drummers in forever. I'm so happy. And but I just couldn't. I was like, how did he do this? How did he do this? Because it was so incredible, because I think the magic of your work on Birdman is drummers can be excited and be like, oh my God, it's all drums. Like, this is so amazing. But then non-drummers don't even realize that it's all drums, right? They're just like, that film was incredible. Wow, everything about it. And I'm like, did you realize that the score is all drums? And I think that's so amazing that it's not just like a statement. It fits so perfectly in with the picture. And I couldn't believe how you did it. And then when I saw you do it live and I saw you looking down at the picture and the time code, I was like, oh my God, it looked like you were like hitting millisecond stabs.
I was
amazing,
because I was so nervous that day, because it was the first time I did it, and I really wanted to do it as close as possible to the original. Now, I mean, I'm still doing it 11 years later.
Wow.
I just did a show in France a couple of weeks ago.
Amazing.
But now I do my own version. I do something completely different. But the beginning, that was the most nerve-wracking part, because it's all these letters, and every letter has a drum hit. And that's where the time code was so. Now I can do it just by feel, because I remember I did a show in Mexico and they couldn't get the time code going, and I was freaking out. I was like, how am I going to do this? And then we ran it without the time code. I'm like, oh, I can totally do it without any time code now, because I had been doing it for years already. But yeah, that was the first show, and then Michael Keaton came and we hung out before the show, and he introduced me, and yeah, that was another surreal.
Yeah, he came out and
moment.
introduced you in the film and everything.
Yeah,
so cool.
Super nice guy. Yeah, we hung out afterwards too, and yeah, that whole experience was also very, very, very surreal, because as you know, jazz musicians, we tend to stay a little bit in the darkness because jazz is so niche and it's just so small, and we do it because we love it, but nobody is thinking we're gonna get incredibly either rich or famous playing jazz, and then all of a sudden you get an opportunity to do something with Hollywood, which is one of the biggest industries on the planet, and it turns out to be with Alejandro González Iñárritu, which is a director that I admire deeply, and respect so much. And then it turned out that it was going to win 4 Oscars, so there was nowhere to go but down, basically, after that experience. I mean, it was like, okay, what else can I do? Just playing drums, improvising on my first ever score. It was quite a thing that happened at that point.
So how did you get the gig to do the Birdman score?
Well, this is a really interesting story, because when I was growing up in Mexico City and I was a teenager, I used to listen to the radio a bunch, and especially a station called 96.9 WFM. And one of the DJs of this radio station was none other than Alejandro González Iñárritu.
Wow.
So before I even knew who he was influencing my musical tastes, because they played great music all the time, and I would end up getting some of those records later. And they also had a nightly show called Magic Nights, where they would play slightly more sophisticated music. And then one night I'm listening to Magic Nights, and I hear this song come on, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. What is this? And back then in my teens, I was into rock and I was all these things. I was not into jazz yet. And I didn't know any jazz musicians pretty much at that point. And then this song turned out to be The Last Train Home by the Pat Metheny Group. So I was like, wow, this song is so cool. Who is this? And then a voice came on. Oh, this is Pat Metheny Group. Pat Metheny Group. I started checking them out. And back then, it was not like you could go on Spotify or YouTube and check them out. So you actually had to buy an album or something. But then it turns out that I first heard the Pat Metheny Group thanks to Alejandro González Iñárritu.
That's great.
And then, it's crazy. And then in 2005, fast forward many, many, many years, I moved to the States. I go to Berklee. I got the gig with the Pat Metheny Group. We're doing the Way Up at the Universal Amphitheater in Los Angeles in 2005. And they tell me there's going to be an after party. There's going to be some interesting people coming. I'm like, cool. So we did the gig. I remember it's a great gig. It was packed. And the Way Up, like I said before, it was a super long, intense gig. So I was drenched after the gig. And the after party was backstage. So I was trying to slip by and get to my dressing room and change, because I was just a mess, it's a sweaty mess. And then I'm just trying to go by everybody. And then all of a sudden I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I'm like, ugh. And I turn around as this dude, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you, but I'm just such a big fan of the group, the Pat Metheny Group. I love this band, and you're from Mexico, I'm from Mexico too, and it's so great." And I'm like, "Oh, cool, man, yeah." But I just wanted to go to my dressing room and change. But he seemed very knowledgeable about the group, about music, and he's like a very interesting guy. So I just continue talking to him. And then at one point I asked him, so, what do you do? And he said, oh, I direct films and commercials. But then I thought of everybody directs films and commercials in LA, so it's not that big a deal. And then I asked him anything I would have seen. And then he said, well, I did this thing, Amores Perros and 21 Grams. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so, I just apologized profusely, gave him a hug. I was like, man, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you. I love your work. And then I told him about WFM and all that stuff. And so, super nice guy. We exchanged emails. We stayed in touch through the years. And then after, 2012, was it? 13, and now I can't remember, but I think it's 13. He called me, and he never called me. So all of a sudden I see in the caller ID AG Iñárritu, and I'm like, what does he want? He never calls me, and so I picked up, And he said, "Oh man, Antonio, I'm glad you picked up. I'm working on my next film. It's going to be a dark comedy." He sounded so excited, and I think the whole, the comedy and rhythm go together. And I'm thinking, it should be with drums. I'm thinking you could do it. What do you think? I remember you that night at the Universal Amphitheater. You were like an octopus, man. It was like, this solo you did. It's just, do you want to do it? And I'm driving. I'm in Miami with my wife and her grandmother, and I'm driving. I'm like, yeah, of course, man. Yeah, I want to do it. And cool. So I send you the script. Great. Okay, so we hung up, and I'm like processing this, and my wife was like, "What happened? What was that?" And he said, "Well, I said it was Iñárritu offering to do the music for his next film." And she's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's insane." And then, I was so excited, and then all of a sudden, I'm like terrified because I was like, how am I going to do this? I've never done a film score. I never cared to do a film score before. I never looked for it or anything. And then all of a sudden, it's an Alejandro González Iñárritu Hollywood movie, So, but I thought, okay, he knows what he's doing. If he called me, he probably, it was for a reason.
Yeah.
So then I get home, and the script had already arrived. So it was a physical script.
Wow.
And I started reading it. And, if you've seen the movie, it's a weird movie.
For sure. I can only imagine reading the script with no context.
Man, I started reading this script, and I'm like, what the hell is this, man? I was not good at reading scripts. I didn't know what to make of it. And I was trying to imagine drums on top of this, and I was like, wow, this is going to be the weirdest thing anybody has ever made. And then I finished the script, and I remember he told me it was a dark comedy, and I realized I did not laugh one time. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. I really got nervous, but I kept thinking, just trust the process. He knows what he's doing. And then he asked me for some demos. He said, send me something really aggressive, something very pensive, something very chill, something that kind of represents the passage of time. He gave me a few pointers. So I didn't have a studio back then. So I went to my friend's studio, and I recorded a bunch of stuff to a click. And then I sent them. And I was trying to think, okay, how do I approach this? I should approach it like a film score composer with themes. So, okay, maybe I'll do this theme for Michael Keaton's character. Then I'll do another theme for Ed Norton's character, but maybe something that sounds a little cooler because he seems to be cool in the script. I'm not sure. I mean, I wasn't sure of anything at that point.
Yeah.
So I sent him these demos. And then he calls me a couple of days later, like, "Man, Antonio, I listened to the demos. They're great, man. Thank you so much for sending them. But they're exactly the opposite of what I'm looking for. That's not it." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." So, a little more information would be helpful.
Worst response.
What are you thinking? Yeah, and he's like, "No, I really just want you to improvise, man. I want organic, spur of the moment. Just do what you do." And then when he said that, I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna react to what he's telling me instead of overthinking everything that I'm trying to do." And then we went into the studio in New York at Avatar Studios back then, now Power Station. Yeah. And I brought my drums, and we did the whole movie with just a script. He sat in front of me, and then he would explain each scene to me with great detail and tell me, just go, improvise. So I told him, look, because these are long scenes, can you sit in front of me? We imagine the scene at the same time so that I get the timing right of what you're thinking. Then just raise your hand every time you see the next phase of the scene. So then he would explain the scene. I would start playing, and then he had his eyes closed, and then he would just go like this, which meant that he got up and now he's walking towards the door, and then I would play something else, and then just improvising, Wow. And then he grabbed those demos and superimposed them on the rough cut of the film. Then he brought me to LA. They showed me what they did, and he had a lot of comments about what he thought worked, what didn't work, what needed to be faster, slower, more intensity, less intensity, and then we redid everything, but now looking at the film. So now I had a really good blueprint on what to start from, but I was watching. So then I could follow movements, and he would tell me, okay, when you see him hitting the wall with his hand, you just give me something big there. So then those kinds of instructions were a lot more graphic, and then I could follow them because I was actually looking at footage. And then that lasted a day and a half, and then what ended up in the film was a combination of the first demos and especially the second session, but there was a little bit of the first demos in there too.
That's crazy that some of the first demos made it.
Yeah, I think. And one thing he told me is like, your drums, because he this is after he had put the first demos on the rough cut, and he said, it's like your drums sound a little too good. They sound a little too good for this. And I'm like, how I'm not sure what you mean by that. And he said, yeah, I mean, this movie happens in the bowels of an old Broadway theater, and your drums sound super pristine and beautiful. I need them to sound like fucked up and beat up and, like they've been in storage for 50 years. How can we do that? So I started putting T-shirts on and detuning the drums completely. One funny thing is the first thing you hear in the movie, right after the R from Regency and 20th Century Fox, is my voice in Spanish saying, alcancé a hacer eso, se oía, while I'm tuning my drums. And it means I was trying to do that. Did you hear that? Empecé con eso, se oía. When I went to see the movie for the first time in a theater, I heard my voice and I was like, what? That's my voice. Yeah, I mean, it was such a surreal thing. But yeah, I had to work on really transforming the sound of the drums and trying to make them sound like something I wasn't used to. I used a lot of stacks and just trying to make the drums speak a different language almost.
His vision and your execution together is so perfect. Like being a drummer, hearing that in the beginning, hearing you talk, and then hearing like the tuning, you like lean in. But even not being a drummer, it still it like builds this tension, and you lean in, and then you see how all the words are perfectly in sync to the drums and everything. It was like, it's such a wonderful marriage. Like you created this whole new thing, and now you're like the drum score movie guy. Like here you are doing it in TV series and movies. Like it's like that when kickstarted you, and it's just like it's meant to be, man.
It has been the gift that keeps on giving, man. Because I think a lot of directors, a lot of producers started kind of realizing that this has a lot of benefits because it has a lot of forward motion, it has a lot of drama, it has a lot of the things that you're looking from a film score, but it's not spelling out things as much as if you have an orchestra. Where it's a sad scene, you put the minor strings, and then it's a happy scene, and then it's just a very different way of approaching the score, because there's obviously only percussion that has a lot of momentum. But it really, now I feel now doing the studio, I really feel like I know what I'm doing. Back then when I did Birdman, I felt like I was just in the moment, just trying to do what they told me to do. But now I think I've really worked this scoring with drums into a science where I can really make it kind of be another character that is interacting with the dialogue, interacting with the movements, interacting with the actors, and really kind of dressing up a scene in a very different way than if you're just kind of playing background music underneath something that is happening. So it was really cool. I mean, finally I met the whole cast in LA just a couple of months ago. There's this huge Apple event, and I had never met anybody. I've been doing this right here in my studio in Spain, and I never met anybody except on Zoom. I met Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, and we talked a few times, but that's it. And then I go to this event, and then I start introducing myself I went to Bryan Cranston, like, hey man, I do the music for the series. It felt
so crazy,
so awkward. Yeah. And he's like, oh man, and he gave me a hug, and he's like, man, I have to tell you, it's like another character of
Yes.
the series. And when Bryan Cranston tells you, then okay, then I believe it. So that was really nice. And then finally I saw Seth and Evan in person, and they were like, "Dude, you're not just a figure on Zoom." And they gave me a hug. And it was really cool. But yeah, it's kind of surreal. It's very meta because I do the music here, then I send it, and then I start watching the series here on my TV in the living room, and then like, oh, there's the music I've been doing in the other room. It's weird.
We're going to get to the studio. I just want a couple more things on Birdman, if we could.
Yeah, of course.
To talk about like a specific scene, like I really, really love after the fight scene between Ed Norton and Michael Keaton, when you do those rolls. It's like so intense. Like how does it feel in those moments? Like how do you get into the intensity of the film and the characters?
Oh man, it's so easy when you have that kind of material to work with, And I remember being in the studio and Iñárritu has a very intense personality as well. So he would be yelling stuff at me, from the control room, and looking at that footage. Of course, it's just so exciting. And when I do it live now, is the same thing. It's just. It's such a great movie, I always tell the audience, like, if you have seen it before, I think you're gonna discover a bunch of new things, because every time I see it, I discover maybe something new that I hadn't seen before. It has so many layers, and if you've never seen it, I think you're in for a treat, and then I get going, and it's just such a great film. Thank God, because I've done it, hundreds of times at this point, and I've seen it so many times. But every time I see it, I'm like, man, this is a great film.
Oh, it's so special. And so you had already won Grammys previous to that with ensembles with Pat and everything. But you end up winning the Grammy for Best Score for this film. How did that feel? Because that's just like all you on that one.
Well, that was a redemption moment, because what happened in the Oscars is that there was a lot of talk about the score being an Oscar contender, and then everybody. Like pretty much every article I would see, like it was okay. These are the Oscar contenders for original score, and I was in there, and I was like, "Wow, this is very surreal, very surreal." And then all of a sudden, the Academy decided that I was not eligible, and they eliminated the score. And Iñárritu was furious, and I was perplexed. I was like, "Why? What happened?" And they said, "Well, it's just there has to be more than 50% original score for it to qualify. And we believe there's less than 50% original score versus incidental music," which he has classical music in the parts where the play that they're doing within the movie, that's what goes on in the play, the classical music. And so we did a recount, and they were wrong. I mean, it was definitely more original music than pre-recorded music. So when we appealed, and we thought, okay, it was just a technicality. Now it's going to be cool. And then they came back with a second reason, saying, well, still, we believe that the original score is too diluted by the incidental score, so not eligible. So Iñárritu was like, man, these people, and what I took from it is like, okay, I think they don't want me competing with like an orchestral score. This jazz drummer that it's his first score ever. We don't know this guy. This is not real scoring. He's improvising on top of this. It's not like a John Williams score. And that a year, I remember, it was Hans Zimmer, I think Trent Reznor, Alexander Desplat. This heavyweights, man. Who am I? Nobody knew me. So I think the way I saw it is like, okay, they didn't want me near. They didn't want me near these other legends, and that's what it was. But then I got nominated for the Golden Globe. It won a bunch of other awards. which always was incredible to me that all that stuff was happening when it was happening.
It also won a bunch of Oscars still, which like your score is such a huge part of that.
Yeah, 4 Oscars, including Best Film, Best Director, Best Cinematography, and Best Original Script, which, it was, I remember 4 years, out of 4 years, were divided between 3 Mexican directors, Cuarón, Del Toro, and Iñárritu.
Wow.
4 years straight.
It's amazing.
So there's something in the water. It gets you sick, but it also makes you a really, really good director.
Worth it once you get over the throwing up. Yeah,
totally worth it.
Yeah, man, that's great. That must have been really frustrating. It makes me mad just thinking about it. And yeah, clearly it was like, let's keep this guy out for now. Like it's his first film, jazz drummer. That's really upsetting.
Yeah, but I have to say the controversy around it almost helped because there was so much talk about it. I remember all the drummers were enraged. Writing, on social media, like, how can this be possible? And now a lot of people think that I actually won the Oscar because there was so much talk about it. So like, Oscar winner Antonio Sanchez, like, oh, fine,
sure.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Well, when you win Best Picture,
who am I? Who am I to tell them no?
Wow, dude, that's incredible. So winning the Grammy, and that's your music community surrounding, and like, I mean, to the music world, that's the most important award. So, congrats on that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that felt amazing.
It felt amazing. I mean, I still yet have to win a Grammy for my own projects, my music. I got nominated for my album Bad Hombre, and that was great. But I still want to do that because I've won 3 Grammys with Pat, 1 for Birdman, 1 with Michael Brecker, and I still don't have my own Grammy with my own music. So that's still something that I definitely want to accomplish. And sorry to segue into my solo career, but that has been such a focus for me. Especially Birdman gave me a lot of no pun intended wings to start doing my own thing. And after Birdman, I remember, what could I do now that is almost like a continuation of the Birdman score, but in my own way. And I remember immediately after Birdman, it just happened that my wife and I got this house in New York, in Queens, and it had a cool basement, and I turned it into a studio, and I bought the gear that you see behind me, and I learned how to use it because I got a gig to do another movie, a Spanish movie. It was a documentary. And I had basically a month to buy all the gear, set up my studio, learn how to use it because I had never used Pro Tools in my life, and then record this new score. So thanks to that, it was a very steep learning curve. But then all of a sudden, I had these toys. I had my drums, and they were always mic'd, and they sounded great. And I was like, okay, I want to do something special that comes from the drums. And that was around the time when Donald Trump was his first candidacy. So I remember, he came out in his golden escalator and said that the Mexicans were criminals and all that stuff that we all know now. And I was like, man, how can somebody say these things out loud? How is this possible? Because I'm from Mexico City, but I'm also an American citizen. So I was very torn with this thing, how to feel about it. And I just went into my studio and I just started improvising just a bunch of stuff without thinking about it. And then those improvisations, I started just editing them and then putting a bunch of electronics on top, under, and then just not creating tunes. They were not songs, they were not tunes. There's nothing too hummable about them, but I just wanted to create vibes that came from the drums. And that was a really fun thing. I was not thinking at all about how long are these tunes, who was gonna play them, who's gonna like them. Nothing. It was just kind of for me almost. And then that one got nominated for a Grammy. So that was great. But like I said, I'm still, as a composer, My solo career and my film scoring career now have been intertwined so much because last year, for example, for the studio and this other series that I did called Stacks, I wrote so much music, like crazy amounts of music. But it's very different when you're writing them for somebody else, you know, for visual media, than if you're alone with your thoughts trying to figure out what is going to be your next album. And you know, my last solo album, my latest I should say, is Shift Bad Hombre Volume 2, which is where I invited a bunch of my favorite singer-songwriters. I wanted an experiment where I had this beautiful, well-crafted songs that then the singers would, and the authors of these tunes would give me carte blanche to do whatever I wanted to them. So that was my pitch. Can you give me a tune with your own voice and then your permission to reinvent your song?
If I could stop you, because I do want to get into that.
Yeah.
So Bad Hombre, I love Bad Hombre 1. That album is incredible. How do you put a solo album together? Like, because that's such a different thing from you doing a score or you working with these ensembles that you do. So how do you put a solo album together?
You mean like a solo, like only me album?
Only you album.
Yeah. So that's a completely different process that I enjoy so much because it usually is born from the drums. That's the way that's the way I did Bad Hombre number 1, and I'm an improviser at heart. That's I always say that I was always too busy for rock and roll, and that's why I didn't make it with a rock band because I like improvising too much. So I think I was maybe too much for any rock band that would have me. But I just love sitting on the drums, improvising, and then finding things. So you start finding avenues. If you sit for an hour, for 2 hours of playing kind of the same beat, the same vibe, all of a sudden you start finding all this forks on the road, and then you start doing variations, and I love doing that, and then grabbing some of these beats and then started composing. To compose from those. So editing them, what's the best of this 10 minutes that I got of just drums? What are my best moments? And then I started snipping them, and then find a bass line that goes with the bass drum that I played, and then I played this thing with the right cymbal. Oh, that sounds like it could be like a keyboard figure, and then I kind of start building it. But those albums I start building from the drums up, because when I have my band Migration. That band is completely different because that's like a quartet or a quintet depending, and that one I start from the piano, writing, a chord progression, then writing melodies. And then of course I'm always thinking of the drums, but I don't start with recording drums. Now that I have my studio, when I do a solo record, I start recording drums and then see what happens. And then it starts growing from there.
So cool. And I mean, getting the Grammy nomination on Bad Hombre, that must have felt amazing too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously when it's your own project, and that was my real solo project where I played every instrument, I did all the editing, pretty much all the mixing. So that was very, very, it's just nice when your peers kind of acknowledge your existence in this incredibly competitive world.
Absolutely. And it's such an amazing album, which is why you got the nomination.
Thank you, man.
So then Shift Bad Hombre 2 comes out 2022. Love that album too, but completely different than Bad Hombre 1. And on that album, you have features from Dave Matthews, Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, Pat Metheny, of course, Rodrigo y Gabriela, Kimbra, Maro, who I love, Michelle NDEGEOCELLO, Becca Stevens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so many people on it. It's unbelievable. It's the most stacked collab album. Like, how did you put that together? How long did it take, and who did all that paperwork?
Good question. I always say it's the one album where I'm the least famous person in my album. Everybody's like, like crazy stars, and it was little old me. But I'm that's another place where Birdman has played such an important part, because whoever didn't know me from my Pat Metheny collaborations or my solo records, usually they know Birdman.
Yeah.
So that's how I met Trent. That's how I met Hans Zimmer at the Golden Globes. You know, we were all in tuxedos, and you know, Trent came up to me and he was like, "Man, you invented a new way of scoring." And that's kind of what we did with The Social Network when it first came out. We were trying new things, and you are doing this new thing that had never been done before. So, you know, kudos. And I was like, oh my God, cool. Thank you, man. And then I remembered he said those things, and we stayed in touch a little bit. And when I started putting this album together, the way it came about is because my amazing friend and incredible singer from Mexico, Silvana Estrada, who, if you haven't checked her out, you have to check her out. She's amazing. She writes this beautiful, perfectly crafted tunes, and her voice is just to die for. So anyway, I was in Mexico and I heard her with her band, and I was just, you know, she's an incredible artist. But then she did this song by herself with her cuatro, just voice and her little guitar, the cuatro, and it was just a very haunting melody in 5/4. It's about the disappearance of women in Mexico. It's heavy, and while she was doing it, I was imagining like a drum beat under that, and then bass lines, and I was like, oh man, if I could have this tune and just for her to let me mess around with it, it would be amazing. And then after the gig, I went to say hi, and I told her, man, that tune you did, could I have it? Could you record just your voice and your cuatro separately and just send it to me? Just let me fool around with it. If whatever I do you don't like, that's it, you know. But just let me have it. And then she sent it to me. I started working on it, and I had a blast because the tune was just so beautiful, so well crafted. So I had this raw, perfect song, and then I could do anything I wanted with it. So at some points, because the harmony was so delineated by what she was playing, then I would remove the guitar and then just play other stuff, and then I bring her guitar in, her guitar out. So anyway, I started messing with it, and I wanted the voice and the drums to be the main ingredients, because usually when you have an album with voice, it's voice, and you know the drums are there, but it's not like they're not equal partners, the voice and the drums. The drums are an accompaniment. And another thing that I was thinking, and that started from Bad Hombre, from the first Bad Hombre, is like I'm from a generation that grew up with albums like So, Peter Gabriel, the Joshua Tree, U2, Sgt. Pepper's. I mean, albums that were so incredibly well produced. So I started noticing on these albums, Tears for Fears, you know, Songs from the Big Chair, or Sowing the Seeds of Love. I mean, just the amount of layers these people put in the albums are just staggering. But it's always a million voices, a million guitars, a million keyboards, a million things, but only one drum set. I mean, Manu Katché is the one that plays drums on So. Stuart Copeland plays drums on one. On Sowing the Seeds of Love, same thing. You have Simon Phillips on one, you have Manu Katché on another one. So I'm noticing there's only one drummer, always. So I was like, okay, why can you use the drums as a production tool, just like you would use keyboards, and start layering drums and stacking drums? So then that's what I wanted to do in this album. So I was like, okay, why can you have one drum set doing one thing on the right, then pan another drum set on the left doing a completely different thing, but with compression, and then have another one that goes this way? And, you know, sometimes I would have like, you know, 4 or 5 different drum sets going on at the same time. Or, you know, the Yamaha EAD mic.
Oh, yeah. The EAD
so
10.
So you put that on the bass drum, and it captures the whole kit. So instead of having 16 tracks of drums, then I have one stereo track. So then I was like, if I wanted to play something else, I would use that mic, and I had, you know, multiple tracks of EAD, just kind of doubling what I did on the big 16 channel drum set, and then all of a sudden it starts sounding like a monstrous kit. And I was like, and then how you start panning in, how much compression you put on one, how much reverb you put on another one, it just started being so much fun. And this was a pandemic project. So all of a sudden we were at home. we couldn't go anywhere, so I started working on that tune of Silvana's. I loved it. She loved it. She was like, "Man, I never thought my tune could sound like this," and I love it because her tune was very linear, and what I did was just peaks and valleys everywhere. So she liked it so much that that encouraged me to keep going with that. And then the second person I asked was MESHELL and NDEGEOCELLO, which is one of my favorite musicians, artists, producers, bass players. And she gave me this beautiful song, and I worked on it and sent it to her, and she loved it. I was like, oh, cool. So then I asked TRENT REZNOR. I was like, I don't know if he's gonna say yes, but I'll ask him. So I gave him my pitch. Could be something new, something old, something a demo, anything.
Over email or call him. What'd you do?
I emailed him.
Emailed him.
And surprisingly, because everybody was home without doing anything, he was like, "Oh, let me think about this." And I didn't know if he was gonna send me, a demo or something. And then he all of a sudden he sends me this email with an attachment, and he's like, Atticus Ross and I got into the studio and we came up with this thing. It's we couldn't help ourselves. We put a little bit of synths in there and, check it out. And I think he thought I was going to do like a Birdman thing on top of this because that's how he thought of me. But then I started hearing Nine Inch Nails, with his voice and all that stuff. And I made like really rocky in some parts, but I come from that world, rock and roll and stuff, but rock and roll a lot of times doesn't have too much dynamics. So I wanted to create something that had crazy dynamics. So I started doing different parts, and I my idea was to finish the tunes, send them to them, and pray that they like them. I did not want it to be like back and forth, like, okay, are you liking this? Then I continue. If you're not liking it, then so I wanted to finish it, mix it, and then give it to them. And I sent it to him, and a few days later, he was like, "Man, I heard this thing. I had no idea you were going to do something like this, but I love it. I haven't stopped listening to it. And as a matter of fact, I want to get my engineer to help you finish, like extract the last 30% out of the mix, and let's go." I'm like, "Oh my God, he likes it." And then Dave Matthews.
Wait, because one more thing on Trent, because what's crazy is it sounds like you're in Nine Inch Nails, like with that song. So you're saying that Trent sent you his vocal with an Atticus Ross like synth line, but like that bass and all those things, you added all that stuff to it.
Everything is me. Everything is me.
Amazing work.
And all the background vocals too, because I was like, oh man, this could use a lot of background vocals, and I just started doing everything myself.
And the drum layering is so big and huge, it's wide. It's amazing. I love it.
Thank you. But yeah, that was the mission, just to kind of surprise the artist with something that they would never expect.
So cool.
And when he sent me the session and I opened it and I saw just the wave form of his voice, and then Atticus synths underneath, and I started listening. I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be so epic. and then immediately I started hearing all these things, and the beautiful thing was that he was very surprised with the end result. That was really
cool. Love that. So yeah, so Dave Matthews is on there too. I'm a big Dave Matthews fan. My little brother's a huge Dave Matthews fan, and we were jamming it the other day in the car, and he was like, "Wait, Ehe is actually a Dave Matthews song that I've been hearing him play live for 10 years or whatever." I wasn't hip to that. I thought it was just on your album. So what is the story of that track with Dave Matthews? How'd you get Dave Matthews on your solo album, and how did it end up being this Ehe 2.0?
Right. So I play with BELA FLECK now a bunch, but back then he invited me to open for Dave Matthews in Mexico, around the Tulum area. He does this residency every year.
So cool.
And I think they do like 3 days, and we open for them one day, and then after we jammed with him, because he usually does it with his guitar player from Dave Matthews,
Tim Reynolds,
exactly. They just do 2 guitars and voices, and so they didn't have drums. And then we were there, and they asked if we wanted to jam, and we played a Jimi Hendrix tune. We played a Dave Matthews Band tune. So it was a lot of fun, and he was super cool, and we met. But then that was that. And then the pandemic came, and then I was thinking, okay, what other people can I ask to be on the album? And of course, I thought Dave, but he's not gonna do this. I mean, who am I to ask Dave Matthews? But then I texted Bela, and I said, man, I'm doing this thing. Do you think Bela would be? Do you think Dave would be into it at all? And I didn't hear back from him. Maybe like 20 minutes went by. And then all of a sudden, I get a strange text from a strange number, and it just says, hey, I'm Dave. Do you need anything? I'm like, oh my God. Dave texted me directly. And I was like, oh my God.
Do you need anything?
Yeah. And then I sent him actually a bit of Trent's tune. I said, this is what I'm doing. Check this out. I don't know, if you have a tune that you would be comfortable, giving to me so that I could rework it, it would be such an honor. And he let me think about it. And then his engineer sent me this Ihi tune. And then I realized there was a video. It never came out on an album, but a video came out. And the video is crazy. It's so cool. And then I opened the session, and it's, all there's like a million Dave's voices, like so many voices, but it's all in 4/4. It is super linear, and it has this kind of spoken word little interludes in between sections. So I'm thinking, oh, it sounds so great, but what can I do with this? And like I said, I wanted to surprise the authors of these tunes. So then I started just, chopping it up, and then, I thought like a We Will Rock You kind of beat, but like in 7 would be cool. So I started with that, and then maybe the chorus can be 9. So I wanted to make sense, of course. I didn't just want to do something stupid. But I just extracted all of Dave's voices, and I just started cutting them and editing them. And then those little interludes, I put them all together. Instead of being like 4 different interludes, I put them all together in one 6/8 section. I mean, the song goes from 4/4 to 7/8 to 9/8 to 6/8. And, I kind of went crazy. And then in the middle of the tune, there was all this space. I was like, man, it would be great to have a crazy solo in here. Maybe Pat would want to do a solo on this. And Pat usually doesn't like doing that kind of stuff. But I was like, oh, let me try it. And then I sent him an email. I asked him, man, would you be into this? And like I thought, he said, I just, if I'm going to do a project, I do the full thing, but I usually don't like doing one thing. And I said, just check it out. And what I would love is for nobody to know that is you, for you to play something so different and so crazy that nobody can recognize you. And he loved that idea.
Nice.
So he loved that idea. And then he sent me this super crazy solo, and I put it in there. And then I finished it, and I sent it to Dave, and I didn't hear from him like for weeks. And I was like, oh my God, he probably heard it, and he's like, what is this? What did he do to my tune? And then all of a sudden, boom, the phone rings. Like I said, this is the pandemic. So I'm home all day, and then all of a sudden the phone rings, and it's him. And he's, oh man, finally I heard it, and I love it. It's crazy. I mean, you completely created a different tune. So I want to give you authorship. Let's make this Ihi 2.0, and you're a co-author. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm game, man. So what surprised me about the whole project is how willing everybody was to just do it for the music. They had absolutely nothing to gain from this. Nobody except me. I'm the only one who had anything to gain. Like I said, I was the least famous person on the whole project. but they did it, I think, because they believed I could do something interesting. And the cool thing is that everybody liked what I did, and everybody got surprised musically by what their tune became. So that was cool.
They clearly all just love what you do, and we're happy to be a part of it, man. That's amazing.
Well, I'm happy that we're a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, legendary. We could talk for like 3 hours probably just on Bad Hombre too, because there's so many collabs. So we'll jump into the studio.
Sure.
Go listen
Sounds good.
to Shift Bad Hombre 2 if you haven't, or revisit it. Okay, so the studio, Apple TV, 2025. It has the most Emmy nominations right now. Congrats on getting the Emmy nomination for the score as well. It's so sick.
Thank you.
I loved it. I loved it from front to back. 10 episodes, amazing show. And in watching it, it's so funny because Seth Rogen is clearly a huge Birdman fan. So how'd you get the gig to do the score for the studio? I'm assuming it probably came from Seth being like, Birdman, get the Birdman guy. Is that what happened?
Well, it's funny. That almost happened, but the way it started was my agent in LA. He called me. He said, "Man, I've been hearing that Seth and Evan Goldberg have been temping their new series with Birdman." Yeah, so
Wow.
they grabbed the Birdman score and they started putting it on the series, and I was like, well, I hope instead of trying to license the thing. they just like called the guy, and then we got a meeting. Finally, I was on tour doing Birdman in the States, and I was somewhere in California, and we got a Zoom meeting, and I sat down with Seth and Evan, and the first thing came out of their minds, their mouths was like, "Man, we just got to tell you, Birdman's one of our favorite movies, and man, we love that movie, and what you did on Get Shorty too." So they had checked
Nice.
out what I'd done, and that was
Yeah,
really
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
And so they loved that part, and they were trying to figure out how that could fit in. And I said, "Look, I mean, obviously, I don't want to do a copy of Birdman, but I would love to keep on exploring the possibilities of the drums, and we could do completely different drum sounds, and we could make it really rocky for some things, really jazzy for other things, and they started digging the idea, and then Seth wanted to know if what my range was, because that has been a little bit of a crux with Birdman, that okay, if you want drums, I'm the guy, you're gonna call me, but if you don't want drums, why would you call me? So I've been trying all these years to kind of show range in different series that I've done. I'm always trying to put as little drums sometimes as possible, but of course people that hire me, they want that percussive thing. But I always try to push my other more actual composer personality. So they wanted to know if I could do other things, because they told me there's going to be movies within the series, because there's a film studio that is producing movies, and we want to know if you can score the movies within the series. And I said, I gave them all my background. I studied classical, blah 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 blah. I have all these records. I can do anything you want. And then at one point, Seth just said, "Well, I'm sold," and then he did his Seth laugh, and that was it. So it was really cool. They were very. I mean, because I got the first episode and I saw what they did with the Birdman score. It was cool, but there were a lot of things that I was like, oh man, I could make this so much better in 2 seconds just by doing it for the scene, instead of having some random drums just playing in the background. So then, like I said, I think I know now what I'm doing. But back then, when the Birdman experience happened, I was just trying to get by. But now I can surgically go into a dialogue, into a scene, and just really play with the words and play with, especially with space. I love to leave space, and be playing, and then all of a sudden I play nothing, and then they say the word that is the most important, that I keep playing, and it's really like blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's comedy, right? So I do that try to do that in a very subtle way. And then, of course, there's opportunities to do a bunch of other different kind of scoring. Like the one that got nominated for an Emmy is episode 4, called The Missing Reel, where they wanted like a film noir scoring type of vibe. And that was so much fun just to write. I mean, I've never done anything like that before. and just to do like a mystery detective thing for the whole episode with horns and strings and woodwinds and all that stuff. It was really fun. But the what is always the starting point for me is the drums. So I just score all the drums, and I improvise just watching the episode, and I mark in my Pro Tools session, okay, this is important, this is important. What he says here is very important. This is important. And I just kind of mark it. And then I try to find the vibe by improvising. Sometimes it's swingy, sometimes it's straight A, sometimes with brushes, whatever. I just try to find, okay, this fits. And then I do a few takes of that. Then I clean it up by editing it. And then whatever I need to layer, I already have the form and the foundation that the drums already played. And then I can write bass lines underneath or whatever I need to write, because the blueprint of the scene is already there with the drums. So that has made my life so much easier to just start like that. And then I can just start orchestrating whatever I did on the drums afterwards.
And you're on every instrument on the studio soundtrack?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, so far I've managed to maintain this a very economic, very artisanal way of doing things, where I'm doing absolutely everything. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's a lot of work. But at the end, it's like, oh man, it's kind of like the Bad Hombre thing, where, you know, I don't have anybody else to deal with but myself, for better or for worse.
It sounds amazing. You're doing an incredible job. You can hear the evolution of your scoring from Birdman to the studio. Like it's,
I mean,
it's
I would hope so
clear. Yeah.
Otherwise, 10 years later, I'm still doing exactly the same thing. I would hope not.
Are you right now sitting in the studio that you did all of the studio in? That's so cool, man. That's amazing to be doing that from your house, from your home studio. Like, wow, what a big thing.
Well, it's amazing what you can do at home now, man.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people discovered that after the pandemic, during the pandemic, where, okay, everything is closed and there's no studios, just buy some gear and start recording at home. And it's amazing what you can do with a few good mics and a good preamp and a good computer, man. It's amazing. And a good instrument, of course. And of course, if you play the instrument well, that helps too.
It's crazy too, because like visually, when you're watching the show, it's clearly a huge budget show. They have these massive sets. They're renting out huge buildings, and like, you know, like, it's funny. I live in Silver Lake. I live a few blocks away from the
house on episode 2.
Yeah, the house from episode 2. Stein? No, anyways, whatever the house is called. I'm really close to it, and I've been to that house a few times. So, but my point is, it seems visually it's very expensive, especially for like a comedy, right? So like to have it be the exact opposite of this is the entire score, which sounds so big, is just being done at your home studio. That is incredible, entirely by you. That's mind blowing.
Well, that's the weird thing now, and the beautiful thing too, that I can work on a series like this from Spain. You know, I moved here 2.5 years ago, and you know, it hasn't impeded me from doing anything. And as a matter of fact, it's kind of helpful, because a lot of times in LA, they ask me, okay, we need this first thing tomorrow morning. So I can work on it all day. And because of the time change, 9 hours, I can deliver it at 7 at night over here. And they get it first thing in the morning.
Perfect.
It's great.
Like, how does he have the time? For scoring the studio, you did it one episode at a time, correct?
Yeah, it was pretty much, I think it was in order, I think. And in the first episode, we had a few problems because they changed the cut a bunch of times, because you know, it was the first episode. They were finding their footing, but the problem is that I score specifically for, you know, how they acted and on that scene and the timing and their movements. So all of a sudden they would use another version, or it was a little shorter, and then nothing would fit.
Right.
So then I told them I would rather have less time to score it, but I need to have the final version. Otherwise, we're going to be chasing our tails here.
Sure.
And luckily, they were cool with that. And I have a great music music editor. Her name is Lorena Perez Bautista, who is also a drummer. She's great. And a lot of times, if I was on the road and things needed to be changed, she would be able to change it, and I wouldn't even know that she did it because she was so good at it. She actually just won an Emmy for the editing. So
amazing,
very, very cool.
Congratulations!
And one thing that I like is what I was talking about, using the drums as a production tool. I mean, the amount of layering I do on the show. If you see my like, for example, I don't know if you can see here, but I'm just gonna go sideways a little bit, and I think this is one of the templates that I use. It has nothing in it, but it has one drum set in blue, another drum set in red, another drum set in green. And then I can add a bunch of, I usually have 4 full drum sets going on for 16 channels of drum sets. And then I started using the EAD if I need to do extra things, or just the overheads, or just this mic. I do a lot of percussion just with this mic, body percussion or clapping, or, little things with my voice, stuff like that. And just by layering, it's drums, but it sounds like a massive, expensive score because it just sounds so big. But I start with the first drum set. Then once that edited, then I do another pass. And it's funny because it's very visual what I do. I see the sound wave of my first drum pass. And all of a sudden, I see that I left space here. So then when I leave space, then maybe I'll do a little brush flurry on that space when I do the second take. So then I start interacting with the sound wave, because it's not like I had time to learn exactly what I did. I just do it visually. And then I do another pass with the mallets. Then I do another pass with my hands, another pass with minor percussion. And then all of a sudden, it just sounds really orchestral.
Yeah, you're getting amazing sounds, and the way you layer it it's magical, man. You're making movie magic.
Well, it's a lot of fun to just like see the possibilities of our beautiful instrument, what it can do in visual media.
We thank you, bro. We thank you. I got to ask you about your work ethic. So, because you're clearly going really hard. So what are your days like, both on tour and off tour?
It just varies so much, depending on what's going on, of course. But usually, when I'm on tour, you're a little bit on survival mode. Or at least I try to do whatever I think is best for the performance that night. If that means sleeping all day, I sleep all day. If that means working out, it just depends on how I feel that day. Of course, I try to be as sharp as possible and I try to nap a lot. Napping a lot helps me before the gig. I can nap right like 20 minutes before the gig, and then warm up, and then I'm ready to go. So but there's been other times where, depending on the tour, for example, one of the tours I did with Pat, the Unity Group tour 2014, I wrote my whole Meridian Suite album, which was kind of my attempt at doing like a way up in my own way. I wrote the whole album on the road during the day, but that was then, and that worked out fine. And then when I'm home now, if I'm scoring, then it's hard, because when I'm on the road, I can't score because I need the drums, of course. So then I have to measure exactly how many cues I need to do per day in order to finish an episode or whatever I need to do at that moment. So I make an average. Okay, I need to at least pull, 10 cues a day for this amount of days. And then I plan on that, and I'll spend, 14, 15 hours a day just doing that, because I know I'm going to have to leave in 3 days. Yeah. So it's not like I have unlimited time, and nobody has unlimited time, but usually people that do this kind of stuff, they don't travel. That's what they do. And I travel a lot. This year has been insane. So then I have to really organize myself well in order to make the most out of my time when I'm in the house. in my home. Yeah.
In doing a long day, like these 14, 15-hour days, what is your process to stay focused so you can actually have a very productive 14 hours?
Man, it's it's amazing what deadlines do to you.
No choice.
When you have emails coming at you all the time, like, okay, we need this by this day.
Yeah.
Or otherwise everything starts getting behind. It's amazing what you can do. It's amazing what you can do when you have those deadlines. If you have no deadlines, and I'm working on my album, like, oh man, I can take, so long and doing something that if you have a deadline, you can do in a couple of days. So sometimes I try to approach my own projects that way, but it's hard because there's no hard deadline the way there is with movies or TV.
So speaking of your own albums and collaborations, so in 2014, the same year as Birdman, you dropped another album that I love called 3x3, an amazing concept of 3 trios with 3 songs each. The trios consist of Brad Meldau and Matt Brewer is the first 3, and then Christian McBride and John Schofield, which is crazy to listen to that trio because it's like John, you can hear you and Christian, but then it's like hearing you and John instead of Pat. It's like really, really cool to hear the difference of just that that guitar voice. And then one with John Patitucci and my cousin Joe Lovano, my man.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And
thank you.
I love that album, man. It's such a cool album. It's such a great concept. And I was wondering, so for you as a composer and being a drummer, so when you're writing songs, like for example, if you're writing a song that's for Joe and John, and it's the instrumentation is drums, bass, and sax, like how do you write that song?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely it's custom made for them. Every tune was custom made for that particular ensemble. If you hear the John Schofield, Christian McBride trio, those tunes almost sound like they were written by John. They just land so well on John's guitar, because I was listening to John so much. I was like, I want to write something where he's so comfy just playing it, and that.
Will you compose something on guitar?
No, but I would put a nice guitar patch on my computer that sounds kind of like that, and then just trying to imagine it, and I sequence everything really well, and then I play along to it. I make really good demos just to get an idea, and then I send them the demos alongside the charts. But yeah, I mean, when I write for John and Joe, yeah, I mean, I because I played with John a bunch. I used to be in his band a long time ago, and with Joe, I gotten to play a bunch here and there in different ways. So I just know their sound so well because I've been a fan of them for so long too. So then I just try to find things that I feel they would write themselves almost, and I love that exercise because you're writing is your music, but you're writing it thinking of somebody else. But it's still original music. It's not like you're writing for TV or film where they can tell you, no, this is not cool. We want a different one. Is not like that. That song is what it's going to be. But if you can capture the essence of the musicians and have them sound their best, then I think that's when you've done a good job.
That's so cool. That's so cool. What's it like from your perspective working with Joe?
Joe, man, I love Joe because he's such a free spirit. He's just he embodies jazz. What jazz is, man, is like anything goes, anything's cool. We can make anything work. You just gotta listen, go with the vibe, go with the flow, and the spirits will come. To me that's Joe. It's like, yeah, man. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's gonna work out. and playing with him is just like. It gets you into that vibe. Like but you just have to open your ears and things will work out. Just don't be afraid.
Amazing. So this new album that you have with BEATrio with BELA FLECK and Edmar Castañeda. Dude, what? How did that be? It's such an odd ensemble of like banjo and harp and drums and like
banjo, Colombian harp.
Oh, Colombian harp.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny when we do gigs, I'm the first one because it's a collaboration, right? So everybody brought tunes, and it's kind of a collective, and I'm the first one to speak usually, and I say, "Welcome. This is the BEATrio, also known as the world's most unlikely band." Everybody gets so loud because and I tell them, I know there's a lot of music connoisseurs in the audience, but you've never seen this configuration in your life. You know that.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen it before. I definitely never play in something like that. And it started because I've been working on this album that I recorded now. It's going to be almost 2 years ago, which is a bunch of duos with some of my favorite musicians. So I did 2 duos with Bill Frisell, 2 duos with John Scofield, 2 duos with Chris Potter, 2 duos with Joel Ross. I actually also, this was before a duo with Eric Harland that I hope to include on the record. And a duo with Bela FLECK, a couple of duos with Bela FLECK. And then while we were playing, it was such a great hookup with Bela because he's just a master of time, and his subdivisions on his instrument, on the banjo, is just incredible what he can do, and it's so percussive, but it's so precise, So I always wanted to just feel what it would be like to play just deeper with him, and the duos came out great, and then he suggested, "Man, why don't we bring Edmar and see what we could do, the 3 of us?" And I was like, wow. Banjo, harp, and drums, what the hell is that going to sound like? But I was like, man, that could be really interesting. And then Edmar came, we recorded, we jammed, and immediately I was like, wow, this is unique, and it sounds really good. And Edmar is a beast too, and it's just to be in a band that you have never thought of before. It's really hard because you can be in a million piano trios with saxophone, with trumpet, with trombone. It's just things that things that you've done before, ensembles that know. But to negotiate a harp with a banjo and a drum set, man, it was completely different, completely new, and it's exhausting because it requires a completely different thing from each one of us. And I'm like exhausted after every gig because everything is so percussive. The harp, the banjo is super percussive. So we have to be so in sync and so precise, but also we want to, make it loose. And it just requires a different thing from me that I had ever done in any other ensemble. And that's beautiful. At this stage in my career, to be challenged like that because of the instrumentation is not something that I experience too often.
Wow. Yeah, you chose the perfect tones, too, of your kit. Like, it complements it so well. And
thanks, bro.
Yeah, just thinking about how locked you must have to be in order for that to be cohesive and musical.
Yeah,
it's wild.
And we all come from very different places and different backgrounds. So the fact that it works. And Bela is really nice because Bela is really digging it because he hasn't played that much with drummers. I mean, in the FLECK tones, he plays with Future Man, but Future Man is his own thing.
Yeah.
And then he played a bunch with Zakir Hussain, which of course, rest in peace, and he's a master, but he was not a drum set player. So I think it's the first time that he has gone this deep with a drummer. And I knew it would work, just like with Pat. The first time we played, it was like, man, it was so effortless right off the bat. Our time feel was very similar. So then I knew it would be easy, and I think we're really enjoying just like doing some crazy stuff. And he has such good time and such awareness of polyrhythms and what he's doing that is just so easy to play some wild stuff while Edmar is holding it down with a harp, which is not easy because he's playing the bass, he's playing the harmony, and every time he needs to change keys, he has all these little levers on each one of his strings that he has to pull up or pull down, and the string goes up a half step or down a half step. So he's playing in this key, and then you see him switching 5 keys, and then he's in a different key. I mean, it's crazy what he has to do in real time. So it's a cool band because it's something that you've never seen before.
Wow.
And it's a sound that you've never heard before. Which
Yeah, I
is
definitely
really
want to see it. Another unlikely trio of yours that I really want to see is this trio that you have with Michael League and Pedrito Martinez.
Yeah. Yeah.
When
That's
is-
a fun band.
When's the album coming?
The album is coming out in January, I think. And the album
Okay.
is amazing, man. I have
can't wait to
say,
hear that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, Pedrito is just such a master, a beast, of course, of percussion and voices, and the way we recorded it is that Pedrito and I recorded a bunch of stuff in New York. Mike was here in Spain because it was during the pandemic, and Pedrito and I improvised a bunch of stuff, and then Pedrito added a bunch of voices afterwards, and it was kind of a post-production album. We improvised first, and then we created the tunes after, and most of it was done by Mike, who's of course is an insane producer, and he put almost all of it together, and it just sounds incredible. It's a lot of fun, and we've been doing a little bit of gigs. Hopefully next year we'll do some more. And then I have this other project which I'm really excited about, that I went into the studio with Ben Wendell, my great friend and saxophone player, and we just improvised all day. And then we started creating tunes out of those improvisations. And then he came here and he overdubbed a million things with his saxophone and effects. And then I overdubbed a million things afterwards. But it's all saxophone and drums. There's no synths. There's absolutely nothing that is not either a saxophone, and bassoon, or a percussion thing. But it sounds like there's a million synths and sequences and stuff, and it's a lot of fun, and that will come out at some point next year too.
Oh, so cool. Well, speaking of accomplishments, happy anniversary. 10 years with your wife, Tana.
Yeah, 2 days
That's
ago,
amazing.
Man, 10 years. Yeah, but 16 years together, so
Wow.
10 years is nothing. Yeah.
Give me the secrets.
I'm a lucky
How do I
man.
do it?
Well, the secret is if you like, I had my share of relationships before. I'm 15 years older than her, and when I started dating her, I realized, so a relationship is supposed to be effortless. I always thought you needed to work on a relationship. It was always hard work, to keep things moving, and no, we can do this, and let's not fight, and we can. And all of a sudden with Tana, it was like, everything just flows. So it's not every day that you find somebody that you're so in tune with, but I was just lucky enough to recognize that this woman was the one I was in tune with, and then I snatched her immediately, and I asked her to marry me a year after we met, and we've been, she's just an incredible, not only partner but also artistic accomplice. I mean, we've recorded so much music together and done so much music and so many tours and traveled so much making music. It's been really beautiful.
That's so amazing. And you were even on the cover of Downbeat together.
Yeah, that was very nice. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those relationships where it's very symbiotic, but she has her whole personality. I have mine, and we just kind of come together in the middle, and it just works.
Will you invite me to her jazz festival next year, please?
Oh man, you gotta come to that festival. This festival that she created in Croatia is one of the most. I mean, I have to say, it's not because I'm biased. It's not because she's my wife, but I've been to every festival on the planet, and this festival is absolutely unique. It's in this island where there's only foot traffic. There's no cars. You're there for 3 days talking about music. There's yoga in the morning. Everybody gets to stay for 3 days. You eat in this amazing restaurants. You go on a boat to another island and have lunch in this restaurant. Then come back and plant a tree. In the botanical garden. That I mean, it's just really beautiful spiritual experience, but it's all about music and jazz, and she has created this thing that is just really special.
Oh, it's so amazing. I gotta go. Would love to, however I can
go, man. You're
help
invited
contribute,
already.
be a part in any way. I would love to. It looks awesome. It sounds amazing. It'd be great to hang with you guys in person.
Definitely, you're invited.
Oh, Thank you, sir. You know, we do our event, the Jam Jam. I would love to have you. We got to do the Antonio Sanchez Jam Jam at some time, man, in some city,
What
whether
is
it's
that?
LA. So we've been doing this event. It's essentially a live improvisation concert in the round that we've been doing since like 2017. And
I've seen them. I've seen them.
Yes, we've done them with we've done everything from, we've done jazz ones with like Terrace Martin and Kamasi Washington, Ronald Bruner, Ben Wendell. And then we've done Jacob Collier with T-Pain and Steve Vai and Mono Neon. We've done Anderson .Paak with Ice Cube. You know, we've done all sorts of them. We've crossed a lot of different genres.
People are really close to the musicians.
People are
right?
super on top of the musicians, super packed in the round. It's a real fun vibe. It's a real fun vibe.
I'd love to. Count me in.
Yes, let's go. One final thing I'd love to close on. I think this would be a fun thing to talk about. I would love to talk about Roy Haynes. Like, I feel like there's a crazy kinship between you and Roy, like between Pat and Chick and Gary Burton, and like you've played in so many shared like ensembles, and it's kind of like you're revolving around each other, or we're revolving around each other. Like, what's the impact of Roy Haynes been on you?
Huge, man. I think he has been one of the most impactful jazz voices in my life, for sure. I think the way he approached the instrument, the way he approached music, the way he comped, the way he soloed, the sound, it was such a specific sound, which is very hard to get, you know, as you know, on any instrument. But the sound of his snare drum, the sound of his ride cymbal, his combinations that he would do between the snare and the hi-hat. I mean, I stole so much from him, you know, and I would just grab little things that he would do and then just develop them and try to make them my own. But his ride feel, the way he would just be so elastic with the time, is just you know, like Now He Sings, Now He Sobs with Chick Corea, Matrix. I mean, I listened to that thing often because it's just a fountain of information every time and inspiration, you know, and the way he interacts with Chick, and later in life, you know, right before he died, because he played until he was like, you know, 97, 98.
Yeah,
just like my grandpa.
Yeah,
and I would go to see him, and he was playing very simple, you know, and he had his flat ride as always. He would have his flat ride and a little crash over here, and he would play very little. But then all of a sudden, whack! You know, he would just place a huge hit on the snare and the bass drum, and the whole place would just stand up and go like, I mean, it was just amazing to hear the way he could pace himself at that age and just be as effective, you know, with playing so little, you know, because he had chops. I mean, Roy had chops, and it was always very musical. But towards the end, he had distilled it to this thing where it was just the most. There was no fat. It was just the meat every time he played, and it was just amazing to watch, man. I feel so lucky to have watched him up close so many times, and to have played, like you said, with a lot of the people he played with. So I knew I had to come up with some meat myself.
Absolutely, man. He was like a pioneer of what was possible on the drums, you know, and like pushed so hard. And man, it's very cool. Another thing Alex Kerlin told me was that flat ride that he used on Now He Sings, Now He Sobs was an 18-inch Paiste flat ride that Roy gave to Chick.
Oh yeah,
and then
Chick would make everybody play it.
Chick made everyone play it, and then Chick gave it to Marcus Gilmore.
Yes,
so Marcus has it now. Marcus has that flat ride.
Yeah, I mean,
so
Marcus
cool.
comes from royalty, man.
Man, well, Antonio, thank you so much for the hang, dude. I had the best time just chopping it up with you right now.
Oh, likewise, man. Such a pleasure, Elmo. And I'm a fan of what you do, man. I've seen some of the interviews, and you always get to the meat. Now that we're talking about Roy, you always get to the meat, and you take your time, and I really appreciate that.
Man, thank you so much. That means the world. I appreciate it.
And you do your research. You do your research. I also appreciate that, man.
We got to know, man. You're Antonio Sánchez. Make a ton of noise. Let's go, everybody. We're in here. Antonio.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you, bro.
Go with Elmo. 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 This is the stuff, man.